Chapter 252. Foam. Sand. Long Zhen's body crackled. You bastard. Little Zhen, listen to me. It's not like this. Ouch. It hurts. Little Zhen. Screams rang out in the hall one after another. The master and disciple who were drinking tea calmly. Master. Yes? Should we stop them? There's no need. It had been a long time since he had watched a melodramatic family drama. It was quite refreshing. We haven't started tearing down the house yet. There's no rush. Yes, master. No problem, master. Why are you sharpening the knife? Sharpen it first. We might need to use it later. He was afraid that he would not be able to control himself and destroy this pair. Half an hour later, the two of them finally stopped. Perhaps because he was in the wrong, Feng San turned into a punching bag. No matter how Long Zhen attacked him, he had no intention of resisting. It became a one-sided beating by Long Zhen. Perhaps he had forgotten to use his sorcery, but the house did not collapse. The tables and chairs in the house, other than the one that I Ching had specially used an array to protect, were all torn to pieces. Feng San was already beaten beyond recognition. His handsome face was now swollen like a pig's head. He looked weakly at Long Zhen, not forgetting to explain, Little Zhen, it's really not what you think. Get lost. Long Zhen could not suppress the anger in her. She kicked him again. Everyone in the divine realm knows that you, Supreme Divinity Feng San, are a playboy. All the goddesses in your backyard are competing with each other for beauty. She must have been crazy to believe his nonsense. Little Zhen, believe me, this is all a misunderstanding. I did not touch a single one of them. I couldn't tell that you were a man who cherished women. Long Zhen's gaze turned even colder. Keep lying. Right, isn't the new wife here? Why isn't she coming in? I can still drink some wine at the wedding. Feng San wanted to say more, but Long Zhen had already turned and walked out. Soon, she pulled someone in. That person was dressed in a red wedding gown and had a veil over her head. She was slightly taller than Long Zhen. Little Zhen. Feng San crawled up from the ground. Listen to me. The person who brought her here said that she is a stunning beauty. Long Zhen continued to smile. Even I'm a little envious of your luck with women. I'm sure you won't mind. Let's take a look. After saying that, she pulled down the veil, revealing an exceptionally beautiful face. She was indeed stunning, with sharp eyebrows and red lips, full of heroic spirit, especially her eyes, which were especially bright, as though they were shining with light, looking exceptionally familiar. Puff! The master and disciple duo who were drinking tea couldn't help but spit out 2 mouthfuls of tea. Holy shit, no way. As expected of peerless beauty, Long Zhen glanced at the person in front of her. She could not help but feel a chill in her heart. She directly stuffed the veil in her hand back into the other party's hand. Then let the two of you. You. Before she could finish speaking, her eyes widened, as though she had discovered something. The bride, who had been standing quietly a moment ago, suddenly moved in a flash. She grabbed Long Zhen in front of her, an immortal sword pressed against her neck. At the same time, an array appeared beneath them. Don't move. If you don't want to die, take me away from this godforsaken place. Little Zhen. Feng San was shocked. His expression darkened. If you dare to hurt her, I will tear you into pieces. The person's hand conjured a gust of black chi. If you don't want her to die, step back. This is Inchi. Who are you? What do you want? Could this person be a ghost immortal? Feng San's hand, which was about to cast a spell, paused. He looked anxiously at the person in his grasp. Little Zhen, don't be afraid. I will save you. Who needs you to save me? Long Zhen seemed to have lost her mind from anger. She ignored everything else and forced her way through the array. Lightning appeared on her body again, and she attacked the person behind her. The person holding her was caught off guard and was forced back a few steps. Even the yin qi in his hand dissipated. The two of them were shocked. This was not yin qi. The person's expression changed. He turned and tried to rush out of the hall. Where do you think you're going? Feng San snorted. An array lit up at the door, blocking the exit. With a twist of his hand, he summoned a ball of true phoenix fire. With a scorching aura that could burn anything, he sent it towards the person in front of him. No one in this world dared to touch Little Zhen in front of him. The fire came closer and closer. It was about to burn the person. Suddenly, a figure appeared at the door. She raised her hand and caught the ball of fire. Then, she clenched her fist. With a sizzling sound, the true phoenix fire was extinguished. Feng San, Shuning turned to look at the person in the bride's makeup. She raised her hand and called out, "Hey, Father Nyo." Lone Moon, who had just escaped death, froze on the spot. A moment later, a roar reverberated through the entire hall. "Hey, my ass." He swung the sword in his hand at the person's head. "Where the hell did you go?" "Ouch, ouch, ouch, ouch." Shuning subconsciously held her forehead. "Didn't I come looking for you? Look for your sister. Do you think I'm blind? You freaking bumped into her, didn't you? Don't mind such details." "Is this a freaking detail? I was almost roasted. It's not Master's fault." I Ching hurriedly stood in front of Shuning to protect her. Unfortunately, the difference in height was too big. Half of his height could not block his anger at all. The three of us got separated. It's already a miracle that Master could find us. Lone Moon looked down and paused. "Who is this little brat?" I Ching, Shuning, half an hour later. "In other words, you were originally a dragon. That's why you changed back the moment you arrived in the divine realm." Lone Moon, who had just heard the whole story, looked I Ching up and down. "Yes." I Ching nodded. The corner of Lone Moon's mouth twitched. No wonder this fellow cheated all the way. His cultivation level rose so quickly. He was born on the finish line. Damn it. This bunch of winners in life who reincarnated through the back door. I can't catch up even if I work myself to death. Father Nyo, actually, Shuning was just about to speak. "Shut up." Lone Moon turned and glared at her. "You were born on the podium. You have no right to speak." "Oh, Long." I Ching. Long Zhun could not help but ask, "Since this fellow Taoist is familiar with you, it must have been a misunderstanding. How should I address you?" I Ching subconsciously replied, "He's Nyo, I'm Lone Moon. Nyo my ass." He cupped his fists and bowed. "I'm sorry. I was not clear about the situation before. I offended you. I hope Supreme Divinity will forgive me. It's all right." Long Zhun shook her head nonchalantly. "Why are you here?" I Ching asked. He even glanced at his wedding dress. He even changed into a woman's appearance and became a bride? If not for the fact that his face did not change and that they were too familiar with his aura, he and Master would not have recognized him at first glance. The corner of Lone Moon's mouth twitched. He frowned. A moment later, he sighed and said, "I found Shorty." Chapter 253. I Ching and Shun Ying were shocked. They asked, "Where is she? Where is she?" "Don't worry. She should be fine now." Lone Moon frowned. "When I first arrived in the divine world, I was near the underworld. I sensed the same yin qi as the flower in Xian Tong's room, so I chased it all the way to the underworld. Then I found her on the way." "Little Shorty, are you all right?" Shun Ying asked. "He's fine, just slightly injured," Wang Yao said. Lone Moon seemed to recall something. His expression darkened. "She was locked in a cave abode. I was not confident that I could get her out safely, so I let her go and find Shuning first. I took her place for a while and waited for an opportunity to escape. I didn't think that I would be sent here before I could think of a plan. I was even told to marry an old sex fiend who had hundreds of wives." All of a sudden, the three screens all turned to look at a certain phoenix. The old sex fiend Feng San, Little Zhun. Feng San immediately turned to Long Zhun. "Listen to me. I don't know anything about this." Long Zhun turned. "It has nothing to do with me." "Little Zhun." Feng San wanted to cry. "Trust me this once, really. Why don't I bring you to the back palace? Then you'll know how to come back." "I don't want to know." "Listen to me." "I'm not listening." "Listen to me." "I'm not listening." "You said I dash, shut up." I Ching's mouth twitched. Immortal swords filled the sky, all aimed at the two of them. They had already acted out 2 chapters. Was there an end to it? "If you keep talking, I'm going to attack." Feng San, Long Zhun, you're already attacking. You can spill your dog blood later. I Ching turned to look at Feng San. "You should know who the person who sent Father Nyo here is, right?" Feng San hesitated. After thinking for a while, he said, "He's from the underworld. There's only one ghost immortal I'm familiar with there." "Who?" "Ghost Immortal Zhu Ming." Feng San frowned. Then, As if thinking of something, he added, "But if it's him, then he might not be trying to harm you." Lone Moon hesitated. "What do you mean?" "Follow me to the rear hall, and you'll know once you see it," he said as he pointed behind him. They exchanged glances and followed Feng San to the rear hall. As soon as he stepped through the door of the rear hall, the scenery in front of him changed. The majestic hall instantly turned into a dense forest. Then he heard the cries of phoenixes and saw that there were dozens of phoenixes of different colors in their original forms, guarding something. Beside the phoenixes, there were a few women dressed in different clothes. There were formations set up around the phoenixes, and in the middle of each formation, there was an egg as tall as a human, with phoenix plume patterns faintly visible. "This is..." Long Zhen was shocked. "The Phoenix Clan's breeding forest." "It's only temporary," Feng San replied. It had always been difficult for the Dragon Clan and the Phoenix Clan to have children. Every egg needed thousands of years to fully hatch, so the two clans attached great importance to this matter. Normally, after they gave birth, they would gather at one place to wait for their eggs to hatch. Even the Dragon Clan, which had always been separate, would gather at the place where their eggs were hatched for safety reasons. That was why only the clansmen of each clan knew where their eggs were hatched. "They are my wives," Feng San said, sounding a little aggrieved. "So," Shining paused, "these eggs are all yours?" Feng San almost spat out a mouthful of blood. "Fellow Taoist, don't harm me even if you don't want to help. This is the place where the Phoenix Clan hatches their eggs. I'm just bringing them here." "Oh." She thought he was good at giving birth. I Ching, who thought he was good at giving birth. Lone Moon, who also thought so. Fortunately, he did not ask. 10,000 years ago, there was a problem with the original breeding forest of the Phoenix Clan, and they could not find a new safe place. That's why they came to me. I split this mystic realm and asked them to temporarily hide here. Who knew that more and more people would come? His cultivation level was the highest among the Phoenix Clan. Since they were from the same clan, he could not reject them. Even after the new breeding forest was built, there were still people from the Phoenix Clan who came to ask for help. Hatching needs to be looked after from time to time. That's why I also took in some people from other clans who had nowhere else to go. The few of them took a closer look. Indeed, there were women and men in the array. There were even people from other clans as well. Then why do the people in Phoenix Perch Palace call them wives? Feng San stiffened. Awkwardness flashed across his face. That's because I heard that you, Dragon Abyss, took in many servants. I thought you. That's why they called you that." "Oh, *3, so they were just acting out of spite?" "One found a bunch of servants to incubate dragon eggs. The other found a bunch of wives to incubate phoenix eggs. In a sense, these two were a match made in heaven." Long Zhen did not reply, but the anger on her face dissipated a little. The people in this mystic realm are all prepared not to leave until all the eggs hatch. That's why the people here have nowhere else to go. They just want to seek shelter. Feng San looked at Lone Moon and said, "That's why Zhu Ming wanted to send your friend here. Perhaps he wanted her to stay away from something. I think the one who wants to harm her is someone else." The three of them stiffened. "Father Nyo, where is little Shorty now?" Shining asked. Lone Moon paused. He quickly retrieved a transmission amulet and sent some immortal chi into it, but there was no response at all. How could this be? I told her wait for me in a dense forest nearby. Let's go take a look. With that, Shining turned and walked out the door. The others glanced at each other and immediately followed. Lone Moon pulled her back. "Shining, it's this way. You have no sense of direction. Don't rush ahead." Lone Moon and Little Shorty had agreed to meet in a dense forest about 50 kilometers away from Wuchi Mountain. The forest there was dense, and it was very well hidden. Coupled with the chaotic aura outside the forest, it was very difficult to find them there. But shit. Lone Moon looked at the destroyed forest in front of him. There was still some Yin-Chi lingering on the ground. They had only been gone for less than an hour. I'd better ask Zhu Ming about the situation. Feng San looked at the few anxious people and hurriedly conjured a water mirror. A moment later, the image of a middle-aged man dressed in black appeared on the water mirror. He was surrounded by thick death chi. but his face was exceptionally peaceful. There was even a hint of a smile on his lips. Feng-san, why are you so free to contact an old friend? Did you receive the gift I sent? Brother Chu, can you tell me why you sent that woman to me? What exactly happened? Feng-san asked. Why did something happen to her again? Zhu Ming was shocked. Again, Feng-san paused. Chapter 254. Zhu Ming frowned and sighed. That day, I sensed a special aura in the divine underworld. I followed it and realized that it was immortal qi. Then I saw that woman. She was trapped in the blood soul array at that time, so I saved her in passing. The blood soul formation. Feng-san was shocked, and his eyes widened. You're saying that someone wants to extract her soul? That's right. Zhu Ming nodded, his expression solemn. To be able to control the blood soul array, he must be a ghost immortal. His cultivation level is not low either. The person who set up the formation must have noticed that her immortal soul was not as strong as that of a god, so he wanted to absorb her soul to nourish his own body. That was why he set up the blood soul formation to weaken her soul body. I was afraid that if she continued to stay in the netherworld, the person who set up the formation would not let the matter rest. Thus, without waiting for her to wake up, I sent her to your place. I thought that with your ability in Feng Qi Mountain, you should be able to protect her. Lone Moon. So did he marry her for nothing? Then does Brother Chu know who captured her? I don't know either. Zhu Ming shook his head. When I found her, there was only an array around her. In other words, they had no idea where to look for him. Feng-san expressed his gratitude and put away the mirror. Master? I-Ching looked at Shunning. Given Shorty's cultivation, be it in the divine realm or the netherworld, she would be in danger. Shunning frowned. Let's go to the underworld. Yes, master. A certain pair of parents hurriedly said, the underworld is too dangerous. I-Ching, why don't we? There's no need. I-Ching turned and glared at them. He pointed at Long Zhun and said, let's talk about this after we've settled your problem. It was enough that he had his master. Oh, disappointed too, she felt sad and felt that her master had given birth to her son. The netherworld was the place where the dead souls of the three realms were born. It was the complete opposite of the immortal realm, which was filled with immortal qi. At the intersection of the two realms, it was as if the heavens and earth had split into two different worlds. One side was filled with the normal green immortal qi, while the other was filled with a thick black death qi. The trio had already arrived at the netherworld. What do we do now? Lone Moon glanced at the wandering souls. I-Ching cast a tracking spell and put down his hand after a while. No, this place is full of death qi. The aura in the forest disappeared the moment it entered the underworld. Shit, Lone Moon cursed under his breath. The underworld is so big. Where am I going to find Shorty? Why don't we ask him to come find us? Shun-Ing suddenly suggested. Both of them were stunned and turned to look at her. What do you mean? Didn't the person who captured Shorty want her immortal soul? Indeed. I-Ching nodded. That blood soul array is for devouring souls. We have immortal souls here too. They would never complain about having too many, right? I-Ching paused, then understood. He turned to look at a certain someone beside him. Why are you looking at me? Lone Moon glared back in frustration. It was good to lure the snake out of its hole, but why me again? Shunning. They won't be able to see me even if I go. I-Ching, I am no longer an immortal. And Father Nyo, didn't you not change your clothes? It just so happens that I don't need to change anymore. Who knows? Maybe he likes women. Master is right. Son of AB *TCH. He understood the logic, but why did he feel the urge to slap these two to death? He took a deep breath and suppressed his violent nature. After thinking for a while, he said, all right, I will set up a spirit-gathering array to lure him out. But this is the underworld. I can only hold it for 5 minutes at most. You two hide well. If he escapes, don't ask me for food expenses in the future. Yes, Father Nyo. No problem, Father Nyo. As soon as he finished speaking, the two of them retreated tens of meters away. I-Ching took out 2 aura-concealing talismans and stuck them on his chest. Master doesn't need them. He wanted to slap them to death even more. What should he do? Calm down, calm down. For the sake of invincible sex, only sword cultivator disciple, he would endure. Lone Moon took a big step forward and walked some distance away. He conjured a seal with both hands, and a spirit-gathering array appeared under his feet. It emitted a faint white light, and the overflowing yin qi and death qi in the array were immediately cleared out. It was especially obvious in the pitch-black underworld. Lone Moon walked into the array and sat down cross-legged. He pretended to meditate and regulate his breathing. Immortal qi emanated from his body. In an instant, the wandering souls around him seemed to have encountered something scary. They all fled in different directions. He sat there for a full 10 minutes. Apart from the decreasing number of wandering souls around him, there was no other reaction. It was eerily quiet. Was it useless? Lone Moon frowned. Could it be that the other party had seen through their plan? Or had they been discovered when they entered the underworld? He hesitated whether to retract the immortal qi. After all, this was the underworld. Although the spirit-gathering array could temporarily isolate the surrounding yin qi, it would not last for long. Just as he was about to retract it, he suddenly felt a cold yin qi that was different from the surrounding wandering souls flying towards him. It's here. His heart tightened. He immediately summoned a wall of qi to protect himself. There was a loud bang. A ray of black qi hit the wall of qi. Together with the array on the ground, it was instantly shattered. Lone Moon retreated more than 10 feet to avoid the attack. Who's there? Huh? A sinister laughter suddenly sounded. A human figure suddenly appeared in the black aura in the sky. It was a black-clothed woman. Her face was strangely pale, and 2 streams of bloody tears seemed to be flowing uncontrollably from her blood-red eyes as they flowed out. She looked at Lone Moon with a look of madness. Immortal soul, my immortal soul, it's my mind. As she spoke, an even thicker yin qi exploded from her body. A huge array immediately appeared above their heads, flashing with a blood-red light. Blood Soul Array. Lone Moon was shocked. He turned and shouted, "Shunning!" The next moment, a rain of swords appeared in the sky and attacked the ghost immortal in the sky. The swords pierced through the heavy yin qi and the figure in the sky. Several holes appeared on the woman's body. Even half of her head was missing, yet she did not seem to feel anything. She turned around and looked at Lone Moon with her blood-red eyes. Her body, which had been pierced through, was instantly restored to its original shape. Immortal soul, my immortal soul. With that said, she turned and pounced in Shun Ying's direction. The yin qi that was even stronger than before covered the sky and earth. Lone Moon was shocked. He hurriedly reminded, "Shun Ying, be careful. She doesn't have a physical body. You're grabbing, Bam." Before he could finish speaking, the ghost immortal was pressed to the ground by a certain someone. Shun Ying turned to look at him. "Father Nyo, what did you say?" "No, nothing. Mother asterisk her. Immortal soul, immortal soul." The ghost immortal was pressed down by Shun Ying until she could not move. Yet she still stared in the direction of Lone Moon and I Ching, unwilling to give up. Lone Moon hurried forward and asked anxiously, "Where's the other person from the immortal realm that you captured earlier?" Yet the ghost immortal did not seem to hear him at all. She only tried to squirm out of Shun Ying's hands and pounce toward Lone Moon. She was even crazier than before. This woman, what's wrong with her? Chapter 255. Lone Moon frowned. Suddenly recalling something, he turned to the person beside him and said, "I Ching, check her soul." I Ching nodded. He bent down and channeled some god power into the woman's glabella. A moment later, his eyes widened in shock. She doesn't have a primary soul. Indeed, Lone Moon's expression darkened. The primary soul was the most important part of a soul. Without it, a person would not have any consciousness. They would only act on instinct. She was no different from a wandering soul. But why would she attack them? And her target was clearly the immortal soul. "So you guys are here. It took me a long time to find you." Just as he was thinking about it, a familiar voice rang out. A figure dressed in black, similar to the woman's, landed in front of the 3 of them. "Your ghost immortal Zhu Ming." Lone Moon recognized him as the man in Feng San's water mirror. "You know me?" The newcomer nodded in surprise. He was crying tears of blood, just like the woman on the ground, but his expression was not as crazy as hers. Instead, he cupped his fists and bowed. I am Zhu Ming. Greetings, fellow Taoists. My old friend Feng San said that you guys entered the underworld to look for someone. He asked me to help you. So it was that couple who called him. Lone Moon heaved a sigh of relief. Thank you, fellow Taoist. You're too polite. My old friend Feng San's friend. I'm naturally. Mother Feng. Halfway through his sentence, his eyes widened as he looked at the female ghost immortal. Fellow Taoist Zhu, you know her? Lone Moon asked. Mother Feng, it's really you. Zhu Ming stepped forward anxiously. He looked at the crazed woman and looked up at them. What is going on? We wanted to lure out the ghost immortal who kidnapped our friend. Lone Moon explained what had happened. But it was her. How could this be? He looked shocked. Although Mother Feng has lost her consciousness, she has always. He stopped mid-sentence and scanned Lone Moon from head to toe. Could it be that you still have an immortal body? Lone Moon exchanged a look with the other two and nodded. I do have an immortal body. I see. Realization dawned on Zhu Ming's face. He seemed to have figured something out. No wonder I met that friend of yours near the cave abode. So it's Mother Feng. Fellow Taoist Chu, what do you mean? Lone Moon asked. Zhu Ming's expression darkened. A moment later, he sighed deeply and bowed to them. Mother Feng is my junior sister. She is not in her right mind and has offended us in the past. Please forgive her. As he spoke, he stepped forward, knelt down, and patted the woman's head. The next moment, the person who had been struggling madly a moment ago suddenly quieted down. She stood there motionless, as if she had become a fool. She ascended to become an immortal when she was alive, and after she died, she became a ghost immortal, so she's very sensitive to immortal souls. She attacked you because she sensed a similar immortal soul and thought it was her own primary soul, so she instinctively wanted to take it back. Lone Moon glanced at the person on the ground. No wonder she quietened down the moment he sealed her divine perception and 5 senses. You mean to say that the person who took our friend was not her? I'm not sure either. Zhu Ming's expression darkened. He looked closely at the remnant yin qi on the ground. With a twist of his hand, a sliver of yin qi appeared in his palm. The last time I saw your friend, the remnant yin qi of the blood soul array was indeed the same as Mother Feng's. Although I don't know why the blood soul array did not work, Mother Feng did not have a primary soul. However, Mother Feng doesn't have a primary soul and has lost her mind. If your friend is really in her hands now, she would probably use the blood soul array immediately instead of bringing him back to the netherworld first. She wouldn't have fallen into a trap and come here. Lone Moon fell silent. Indeed, if this ghost immortal called Mother Feng was really a lunatic with no consciousness, how could she have thought of returning to the divine underworld before using the blood soul array after capturing Shorty? But if it wasn't her, then who had captured Shorty? But the place where Xian Tong went missing did indeed have remnant yin qi of a ghost immortal. Zhu Ming thought about it. In that case, why don't I bring you to Mother Feng's residence to look for her? Perhaps there will be other clues. What's more, the blood soul array needs 2 days to completely extract her soul. If she really did capture her, she should still be in her cave abode now. He looked at the woman beside him, who was already playing with her hair. Mother Feng is my junior sister after all. I can't just leave her like this. The few of them exchanged glances. There was no other way. Thank you, fellow Taoist Jew. Thus, the Taoist once again flew on his sword in the direction Zhu Ming had pointed out. Zhu Ming carefully helped Mother Feng up from the ground. Tung Yun led the way from behind. You two are quite close. Zhu Ming had just helped Mother Feng up when he heard a woman's voice. He looked up and saw the son that Feng San had repeatedly asked him to take care of. He was only waist-high, but he had a serious expression on his face the entire time. Behind him sat a woman in a white robe with blue trim. She sat cross-legged on the sword, one hand supporting her chin. She looked at him curiously. Zhu Ming was shocked. Huh? Was this woman here just now? Seeing that the 2 people in front of him did not look surprised, he smiled out of habit and replied, When Mother Feng was alive, we grew up together. We were also from the same sect. Naturally, our relationship is different. Shining nodded. Why did she become like this? Well, I don't know either. Zhu Ming frowned. He seemed to recall something. His eyes went blank for a moment. Most people who become ghost immortals die with great grievances. Their obsessions are not resolved. They suffer unbearable pain. They have to use their own souls to become ghost immortals. She was already like this when I became a ghost immortal. Perhaps she has a greater obsession than we do. Oh, then she. Shining wanted to ask more questions. Suddenly, she stood up and reached out to grab the person in front of her. Father Nyo. Lo Moon was flying well. When he was grabbed, he almost fell off the sword. Why are you suddenly grabbing me? He steadied himself. Shining pointed in front of them. There's a river in front. Didn't you see it? They almost crashed into it. What river? Lo Moon looked around blankly. Apart from a stretch of darkness, there was nothing else. Huh? Shun-Ing stared blankly at him. I Ching was the first to react. He summoned a sword filled with god power and flew it forward. Before it could fly more than 3 feet, the sword seemed to have been thrown into something highly corrosive. It melted and disappeared in front of everyone's eyes. In less than 2 seconds, it was gone. Holy shit! Lo Moon took a step back. It could even swallow god power. If Shun-Ing had not reminded him, he would have crashed into it. Chapter 256. It's the Yin River of the Underworld. Zhu Ming exclaimed. The Yin River of the Underworld was formless and omnipresent. It was useless against ghosts and ghost immortals in the underworld, but it could swallow other people's souls. Everyone, be careful. The Yin River is constantly changing. Sorcery cannot detect it. Zhu Ming turned to look at the woman standing lazily behind I Ching's sword. This fellow Taoist can actually see the Yin River. Her eyes are different from ours. Lo Moon gave Zhu Ming an unreadable look. One had to get used to the cheat's eyes. Let's hurry. It's so dark here. Who knows what else is there? It's not far. It's just up ahead. Zhu Ming pointed ahead. The few of them turned and flew in that direction. Shining paused. She looked around. Was it very dark here? It was clearly a piece of gold, and it was a little dazzling to the eyes. Of course, that was except for the pitch-black river floating in the sky. The few of them did not fly for long before they saw a palace floating in midair. The surroundings were filled with thick Yin Qi. Compared to the majestic palaces in the Dragon Abyss and Wu Qi Mountain, this cave abode was much smaller. It was all alone. Perhaps it was because the Yin Qi was too thick, but there were not many wandering souls around. It was so quiet that only the footsteps of the few of them could be heard. This is it. The few of them landed in front of the palace. Zhu Ming seemed to be very familiar with this place. He waved his hand, and the doors to the palace opened. He helped Mother Feng, who was still in a daze, to a chair in the hall. The palace was empty. They could see all the way to the end. Apart from the 4 chairs, there was nothing else. There's a small courtyard behind. The 2 of you can go in and take a look, Zhu Ming reminded them. I Ching, go and take a look. I'll set up an array to look for Shorty's aura, Lone Moon instructed. I Ching nodded and walked to the back of the palace. Lone Moon walked to the center of the palace and released his divine perception. Instantly, the entire cave abode appeared in his divine perception. He activated his immortal qi and began to set up an array. Perhaps to avoid arousing suspicion, Zhu Ming did not help them look for Shorty. He only sat beside Mother Feng. Shining, who was the only one who had nothing to do, also sat on a chair at the side and waited. Perhaps she was a little bored waiting, so she habitually took out a fruit to eat. Just as he took one out, he used a little too much force, and the other one beside him fell out as well, rolling around. Just as she was about to bend down to pick it up, a pair of pale, bloodless hands picked it up first. Mother Feng, who had been sitting on the chair, stared blankly at the fruit in her hands, then looked up at Shun-Ing. Suddenly, he stretched out his hand and gave her a sinister smile. Ah! Shun-Ing tilted her head and took it. Thank you. However, the other party was still looking in the direction of her hand, a pair of bloody eyes staring straight at the fruit on top. Only the dripping sound of blood could be heard. It was very horrifying. Shun-Ing, who had bitten the core, after some thought, he took out the greenest fruit from his storage bag and handed it over. Do you want to eat it? Mother Feng was stunned. She looked at the fruit, then back at her. Suddenly, she reached out and snatched the fruit. His lips curved into a sinister smile again, and he stuffed the fruit into his mouth. The next moment, there was a loud thud. The fruit went straight through his mouth and fell to the ground. The person who had no physical body looked confused. Hey, it fell. Shining picked up the fruit and handed it over. Here, I have more. She took it again and swallowed it down in one gulp. Once again, it fell to the ground with a thud. Ha ha ha. You can't eat it. As if addicted, Shining picked up the fruit on the ground again and handed it over. The ghost immortal still looked like he had just snatched a treasure. Once again, he took the fruit and dropped it to the ground again. This happened repeatedly. Zhu Ming, who was watching the whole time, she did it on purpose, right? She definitely did it, right? There was someone else around. Master. I Ching finally returned from the backyard and shook his head at her. No, the backyard was even cleaner than the front. There were not even any chairs. Apart from Yin Shi, there was nothing else. Zhu Ming's expression darkened as well. If they could not find Mother Feng, they would be suspects. He thought for a moment and suggested, why don't I follow you to the forest where the woman went missing? I'm familiar with ghost immortals' auras. Perhaps I can find some clues? Lone Moon, who was setting up the array, stopped as well. His expression was equally dark. Shorty is indeed not here. Oh. Shining narrowed her eyes, but she ignored them. Just as she was about to pass the fruit to Mother Feng, she retracted it. Mother Feng caught nothing but air. Suddenly, she leaned forward and smiled. I'm not giving it to you anymore. I gave you so many. Why don't you return one to me? Lone Moon, I Ching, Zhu Ming, where's your shame? Didn't you just give me the same fruit? Are you bullying ghost immortals for not having physical bodies? Oh, Mother Feng paused. She clearly did not understand what Shun Ying was saying. Her bloodshot eyes stared at the fruit in Shun Ying's hand, but she did not dare to snatch it away. The corner of Lone Moon's mouth twitched. Hey, you're almost. He was about to reprimand her, but Mother Feng took out a square token from somewhere and threw it at Shun Ying. Then, she stared at the fruit in Shun Ying's hand. Master! I Ching exclaimed. Lone Moon regained his composure as well. He looked at the token in Shun Ying's hand. What's this? A token? Zhu Ming looked confused as well. Why would Mother Feng have something like this? And why did the token seem to be imbued with god power? It should be the eye of the array. Shun Ying replied. Finally, she passed the fruit to the overjoyed Mother Feng. Then, with a loud thud, it fell to the ground. This time, Shun Ying did not help her pick it up. Instead, she picked up the token and walked to the center of the hall. Then, she squatted down and pressed it on the ground. In an instant, the entire cave abode lit up with a bright red light. An array appeared in the hall. The ground began to collapse inch by inch. The red light in the middle of the hall was especially blinding. A moment later, the space around them began to twist and distort. Then, a scene appeared beneath them, but they could not see clearly. This is the entrance to the mystic realm, Zhu Ming exclaimed. Lone Moon asked in surprise. How did you know that there's an array here to open the mystic realm? I could tell. Shun Ying replied casually. Everywhere was golden, except for the circle on the ground, which was black. There was also a square mark. Anyone could tell that there was a problem, right? Lone Moon, the red entrance was getting bigger and bigger. It was about to cover the entire hall. Lone Moon nodded at the other two. Then, he gave him a look. Go in. Everyone mounted their swords and flew in. Zhu Ming also pulled Mother Feng, who was still looking for the fruit on the ground. The red light flashed in front of them. The next moment, they were in another world. Chapter 257. This was a very small mystic realm. Rather than a mystic realm, it was more like a secret room. There was only a wide platform around them. There was a strange array carved on the platform. Even I Ching, who had inherited the Dragon Clan's heritage, had never seen it before. The few of them landed on the platform. Suddenly, the ground lit up with a red light. Countless arrays of different sizes lit up on the quiet platform. Lone Moon felt his heart skip a beat. His primordial spirit was unstable. It was as if something was about to break out of his body. Father Nyo, Shun Ying picked him up from the ground. I Ching also felt something was wrong. He did not land on the ground. Instead, he flew into the air. "How are you?" Lone Moon panted heavily. He used his immortal chi to regulate his breathing. He suppressed the feeling that his primordial spirit was about to be pulled out. The array below can absorb souls. Even immortal souls were no exception. Everyone was shocked. They hurriedly retreated further away. The array on the platform was fully activated. The entire platform turned red. Suddenly, a series of shrill cries rang out. Many ghostly figures appeared in the array. They seemed to be in extreme pain. They wailed and wailed as they tried to hit the red light that trapped them. Every time they hit the red light, their souls would fade a little. But they did not seem to feel anything. They continued to try to rush out of the array. What are these?" Everyone present was stunned. The ones in the formation were called wandering souls, but it was obvious that these souls were weaker than wandering souls. Even their shadows were very faint. "Immortal soul, my immortal soul." Mother Feng, who was still in a daze, suddenly shouted. She seemed to be agitated. She went crazy again. She turned and tried to fly towards the array. "Mother Feng." Zhu Ming was shocked. He immediately used his yin qi to block her. But she became even crazier. She even started to attack Zhu Ming. "Immortal soul, give it back to me. Get it back to me." "What's going on?" Lone Moon looked at the array below and the crazed Mother Feng. They had already sealed her divine perception and 5 senses. Why was she still like this? Could it be that she had something to do with the array below? "Don't you guys feel that?" Shening suddenly spoke. She pointed at the ghostly figures in the array below. "The shadows down there are all the same." "What's the same?" Lone Moon lowered his head to look at the array formation below him. Subconsciously, he took a closer look at the ghostly figures. His eyes widened. Holy shit, they really looked the same. Whether it was the figure or the face, there were actually 2 or 3 people who looked exactly the same. How could this be? I Ching looked confused as well. Although people are similar, no matter what, they can't be completely the same unless... He stopped mid-sentence and sucked in a breath. The 2 of them looked at each other and exclaimed in unison, "Soul-splitting array." This was a formation that could directly separate a person's 3 spiritual and 7 physical souls. Those people who looked exactly the same were originally separated from the same soul. Mas! Just as I Ching was about to speak, Shening had already jumped down and stepped hard on the edge of the platform. With a loud bang, a corner of the platform collapsed. The soul-splitting array immediately dimmed. The hundreds of ghostly figures trapped inside floated out. The 3 spiritual and 7 physical souls began to gather together. The number of ghostly figures decreased by more than half. The shrill cries from before also stopped. Perhaps because their souls were too heavily injured, a few of the ghostly figures were still unconscious. They swayed as they floated towards the exit of the mystic realm. The few people in the air followed them down. These ghostly figures lost some of their souls. Let's hope that the power of reincarnation can restore their souls. Zhu Ming looked at the ghostly figures in the air and sighed. But I'm afraid they're going to be idiots for a few lifetimes. Short E is not among those ghostly figures. I Ching checked all the souls that floated out and heaved a sigh of relief. It looks like the person who captured Short E was planning to bring her here to extract her primary soul after forcing her soul out. Lone Moon frowned. He looked at Zhu Ming, who still had a crazed look on her face. Lone Moon frowned and glanced at the crazed Mother Feng, who was trapped by Zhu Ming. This array looked like it had been set up for a long time. It looked like Mother Feng's primary soul had been extracted by this array as well. That was why she suddenly went crazy. But why was this array that hid the small mystic realm in her cave abode? And why did she have the token to open the entrance? When they entered the mystic realm earlier, apart from the divine I Ching, Zhu Ming's and Lone Moon's primordial spirits were almost pulled into the array. That proved that ghost immortals could not control this array. This array was definitely not set up by Mother Feng. What's that? Shening pointed to the center of the array. The few of them paused. Then they saw a transparent ball in the middle of the array. There seemed to be something trapped inside. This looks like a fragment of a remnant soul. Chu Ming took a closer look and formed a hand seal. Immediately, The remnant soul floated out of the ball and formed a small figure. The figure hugged its knees and curled up into a ball. It looked like a child less than 2 years old, and there was something familiar about its facial features. Shorty, Shining suddenly said. Lone Moon and I Ching's hearts tightened. This is Shorty's remnant soul? Are you sure? Shining nodded. It was the same as what she had seen when she was sleepwalking. That's not right. Lone Moon frowned. Even if Shorty's soul was split, she should look like an adult. This remnant soul obviously looks like a child. Unless... He paused and exchanged a look with I Ching. Both of them had the same thought. This remnant soul was separated from her before she was reincarnated. I Ching's expression darkened. He seemed to recall something and hurriedly looked around. After a while, he pointed to an array beside him and said, Master, look, there's a realm-guiding array here. Shorty must have been pulled from the invincible heavenly palace to the divine underworld by this remnant soul. But the realm gate opened by the realm-guiding array was not stable. It was possible that Shorty had not been transported directly into this array. We had to find her quickly. Lone Moon's expression darkened. He was getting more and more anxious. From the looks of it, the person who had captured Shorty was not just looking for a random immortal soul. He was plotting to get his hands on Shorty's soul. Everyone, Zhu Ming suggested. Since this remnant soul belongs to the person you're looking for, and the souls are connected to each other, why don't we use the connection between the remnant soul and the main body and use the water element technique to find out her current location? The few of them paused. That's right. They had almost forgotten about this technique. Although the remnant soul could not compare to one of the 3 souls and 7 spirits, and it would slowly dissipate over time, it was still one with the main body. Whatever the main body saw, the remnant soul could also sense. If they used the water element technique, they would be able to see Shorty's current location. Chapter 258. Lone Moon hurriedly conjured a seal and guided the remnant soul. A moment later, 2 shadows appeared above the remnant soul. One was where the remnant soul was. That was where they were now. The other was a place filled with immortal chi. Huge, transparent, crystal-like mountains floated all around them. There were even shadows of palaces on them. This is the 1,000-feet mountain. Zhu Ming exclaimed. Where is the 1,000-feet mountain? Lone Moon asked anxiously. That's Supreme Divinity Qian Yu's residence. It's at the easternmost part of the divine world. Zhu Ming frowned. Supreme Divinity Qian Yu may be cold, but he has a good reputation in the divine world. He's a very righteous person. I don't think he would set up such a vicious array. Why would the person you're looking for be there? We'll only know when we get there. Thank you, fellow Taoist Jew. Lone Moon nodded at him and turned to the other 2. Let's go. Let's go find her. I Ching did not hesitate. He summoned his flying sword. Shining grabbed the ball containing Shorty's remnant soul and jumped on his chef's sword. They flew out of the mystic realm. When the 3 of them reached the 1,000-feet mountain, they finally understood why it was called the 1,000-feet mountain. They saw huge, crystal-like mountains floating in the air. They shone with a silver-white light. Moreover, these crystal mountains were moving. They looked like a huge array formation. The mountains were also translucent. It was easy to get lost inside. Lone Moon subconsciously glanced at Shining. He turned and instructed I Ching sternly. Look after her. We're only looking for Shorty this time. We can't get separated again. According to Zhu Ming, Supreme Divinity Qian Yu's cultivation level is very high. We can't tell if he's a friend or foe. Shorty is in his hands. Before we find her, don't act rashly. He added, you still have Orican sealing talismans, right? Yes. I Ching retrieved a few Orican sealing talismans. Give me 2. Lone Moon took them and gestured for I Ching to put 2 on as well. Try not to alert anyone. Do you understand? Yes. The 2 of them nodded. Let's go. Wait, Father Neo, what now? Are you sure? Shining scanned him from head to toe at the bright red wedding robe he was wearing. Are you sure you want to go in like this? F*CK. It was all because of these 2 that he had forgotten to change back. Lone Moon conjured a seal and was just about to remove the shape-shifting spell on his body and turned back into a man. He turned to look at a certain foodie, and with a flick of his wrist, he cast another transfiguration technique. In an instant, the figure changed into a familiar yet strange face. Shun Ying's face. The two of them, what are you looking at? Lone Moon glared at the two of them. Becoming like this is better than any aura-concealing talisman. I Ching. What she said made sense, and he couldn't refute her. Shun Ying. Mother asterisk Kerr. Let's go. Lone Moon rode on his sword and flew forward, bypassing the crystal floating peaks one by one. He released his divine perception to the fullest, paying attention to everything around him. The strange thing was that along the way, they did not see any other Protoss. Not only that, these crystal floating peaks did not seem to have any array fluctuations. Apart from floating here and there, they did not seem to have any other effect. Gradually, on top of the crystal floating peaks, some palaces appeared. Lone Moon took out the transmission talisman that he had given to Shorty previously and sent a bit of immortal chi into it, but there was still no response. The crystal floating peaks seemed to have the ability to block signals, and he could not contact Shorty at all. Shit, he cursed under his breath. There are too many crystal peaks here. The transmission talisman is completely useless. Why don't we split a few? I Ching subconsciously pulled out his sword. You're crazy. Lone Moon rolled his eyes. Do we still want to save Shorty? Can you two violent maniacs stop coming up with such lousy ideas? What if the other party gets angry and kills her? Invincible Sect only has one sword cultivator disciple left. Then what do we do? We can only search slowly. Lone Moon looked at the terrain and waved at the two of them. I just looked at the movement pattern of these crystal peaks. They should all be floating in the west direction. There are no array formations in the middle to control them, and the deeper we go, the more palaces there are. He pointed to the front and said, so I guess that these crystal peaks should be circular around something in natural maze. Shorty should be in the innermost position. Although flying in a straight line is the fastest way to get there, there must be some kind of connection between these crystal peaks. However, there must be some kind of connection between these crystal peaks. There shouldn't be anything that can directly lead to the center. Master, be careful. Before he finished speaking, I Ching suddenly pulled Shun Ying and retreated to the left. Rumble instantly, there was a loud sound, and a huge aura swept over, brushing past Lone Moon's right side. The crystal peaks in front of them seemed to explode side by side, breaking into pieces and falling from the sky. A wide path suddenly appeared on the right side, and they could faintly see the palaces inside. There's a direct path. Shun Ying pointed to the front. Lone Moon, son of AB asterisk TCH. Bring him along and dodge. Will you die? Fu asterisk K. In the next moment, two shocking suppressive forces came from the front. Even I Ching frowned uncomfortably. The surrounding crystal peaks kept breaking. Lone Moon set up a defensive array around himself. There are people fighting in front. Judging from this oppressive force, their cultivation level must be. Before he finished speaking, his eyes widened. I feel Shorty's aura. It's over there. I Ching paused. He sensed carefully and found a familiar immortal chi. The two of them exchanged a look and immediately flew in that direction. The deeper they flew, the more broken crystal peaks they saw. There were even pieces of palaces floating around. In the distance, there seemed to be two figures fighting, one in green and one in white. They could not see clearly, but the aura around them was shocking. Compared to the battle between Long Zhun and Feng San, it seemed even more intense. Even though it was just a wave of suppressive force, Lone Moon felt the immortal chi in his body stagnate. He looked up at the two people in the sky. Huh, Chef, don't you think that white figure looks familiar? I Ching looked up and nodded. Yes, a little, but he could not remember. In the next moment, an impatient voice came from the other side. I told you, I don't know the person you're looking for. No matter how many times you ask, it's the same. I don't know her. The person on the other side did not respond. The voice spoke again, this time in a serious tone. I've already saved the person you asked me to save. It's been so many years. Why do you have to keep pestering me? A moment later, a cold voice spoke. She also said, "You know, you, where is she? Don't go too far." The two of them started fighting again. Why did it feel like that voice sounded familiar? Chapter 259. Before Shen Ying and the others could think about it, an even stronger suppressive force swept over them. There was another rumbling sound, and the surrounding crystal peaks were destroyed. I Ching hurriedly released his dragon might to protect the two people beside him. Shen Ying was stunned. She pointed to the right and said, "Hey, isn't that Short?" The two of them paused and looked in the direction she was pointing. Indeed, there was a person flying in the upper right. She was dressed in a pink robe and had a defensive array around her. She was looking at the two people fighting in front of her anxiously. The two of them were overjoyed. They were about to go forward when Shen Ying raised her hand and shouted, "Hey, Shorty!" In an instant, these four words spread throughout the entire Thousand Mountains range. Even the two people fighting in the sky were stunned. I Ching, Lone Moon, he had the urge to deduct all the food expenses. What happened to coming secretly? Did she know what low-key was? Xian Tong's body stiffened. She turned around in disbelief. Her face was filled with joy. She immediately flew over on her sword. Sect Master. Just as she was about to pounce on them, there was a flash of white light. The white figure that was originally fighting suddenly descended toward them at a speed faster than Shorty. I Ching and Lone Moon finally saw the figure clearly. They were both stunned. Bai Zhe. 2 inches the next moment, the figure appeared in front of the three of them. She looked over with excitement and disbelief. Then, she hugged Father Niu beside her. Shen Ying, I Ching, Father Niu, who was stiffened in the hug, for all, huh? In the next moment, Bai Zhe's cold and excited voice rang in their ears. Shun, shun, shun. For a long time, she could not say the next word. Her ears turned red. Sect Master. Shorty finally flew down and buried her head in Shen Ying's arms. Her expression of ecstasy, just a moment ago, suddenly changed. She cried so loudly that it shook the heavens. Sect Master, you're finally here. I knew that you would definitely come to save me. I Ching, little bitch. Yes, I'm here. Shen Ying patted her on the back. Don't cry. Her clothes were brand new. Bai Zhe, who was carrying Lone Moon, paused. He looked at Shen Ying in his arms, and then at the person beside him who looked exactly the same. There were two Shen Ying, Shun, your sister. Lone Moon, who finally reacted, exploded. Look carefully before you hug her. Bai Zhe finally understood and pushed Lone Moon away without hesitation. In a flash, he appeared in front of Shen Ying as if nothing had happened. Shen Ying. He finally managed to say her name. I really miss you. Shen Ying finally managed to pull the slug out from in front of her. The next moment, she saw his starry eyes. Stunned, she asked, "Who are you?" Bai Zhe, I Ching, Lone Moon. He could faintly hear the sound of a knife piercing his heart. The starlight was extinguished. Bai Zhe, is this the person you're looking for? A questioning voice suddenly rang out in the sky, and the person who had been fighting with Bai Zhe also flew down. Only then did everyone see who it was. He was dressed in a green robe with black hair draped over his shoulders. His face was like jade, and his entire body exuded a refreshing aura that was exceptionally familiar. Apart from his pair of black eyes, which lacked a bit of liveliness, he was simply Father Niu. Tu I Ching and Shen Ying exclaimed at the same time. Lone Moon, what the hell was this? Thousand Legs Hall. Lone Moon, who had already returned to his original appearance, looked at the person sitting in the main seat and felt awkward all over. They really looked exactly the same. If not for the fact that they were wearing different clothes, he would have had the illusion that he was looking at himself in the mirror. Father Niu, you have a brother too? Shen Ying could not help but ask. Get lost. Lone Moon rolled his eyes. Who had a brother? I didn't think that there would really be someone who looks exactly like me in this world. Qian Yu looked at Lone Moon with some surprise. His brows were knitted together as if he was used to it. He looked dignified. Supreme divinity, Qian Yu really isn't Elder Lone Moon. Xiantong was also a little confused. She looked back and forth between the two people who looked exactly the same. Not only did they look similar, even their auras were similar. It was just that one was filled with immortal chi and the other was filled with god power. So it's all because I got the wrong person. Qianyu snorted coldly. Still with some anger, he said, Bai Zhe, what else do you have to say now? The more he thought about it, the angrier he got. Ever since he first met Bai Zhe many years ago, Bai Zhe had been forcing him to ask about Sect Master Shen's whereabouts. No matter what he said, Bai Zhe did not believe him. What's more, he had been guarding the 1,000 Feet Mountain for many years. He had been forced into a corner and even fought over a disagreement. The entire 1,000 Feet Mountain had been destroyed countless times. Now it seemed that he had suffered an undeserved calamity. I told you long ago that I don't know the person you're looking for. All these years, you kept asking me about her whereabouts. Do you believe me now? All these years, you've been in my 1,000. Bai Zhe, Bai Zhe. Qianyu called out twice, but realized that Bai Zhe was not even listening to him. A pair of slightly cold eyes were currently staring at the woman beside him. His clear eyes were filled with the image of the woman beside him. From time to time, he would pass something over to her in a fawning manner. Fruit, oh, tea, pastries. Thank you. Bai Zhe's eyes lit up even more. His ears started to turn red again. Patches of red began to spread, and even his hair started to be dyed red. A moment later, he replied in a low voice, You're welcome. At that moment, everyone could faintly see pink bubbles appearing around them. Xian Tong, Qianyu Lone Moon, I Ching's face darkened as his position was stolen. He resisted the urge to draw his sword. Yu Zhong felt that his kickback then was too light. He stepped forward angrily and said, Supreme Divinity, you don't have to worry about Master's matters. You are. Bai Zhe hesitated for a moment. He took a closer look at the other party's aura and immediately recognized who it was. His expression turned cold. Why was this annoying person still here? He frowned but did not let go of the plate in his hand. Still looking. The corner of I Ching's mouth twitched. He took a step to the side, wanting to block the two of them. Unfortunately, because of his height, his small body could not block the two of them. So, he climbed onto the table. With the advantage of being a head taller than the other party, he stared coldly at the other party. What are you looking at, little bitch? At that moment, the two of them were in such a strange position, staring at each other with big and small eyes. Lone Moon, King retard. He really wanted to pretend that he did not know these two people. Lone Moon frowned and nudged Xian Tong beside him. He lowered his voice and said, Little shorty, what exactly is going on? Didn't I ask you to wait for me in the forest? How did you get here? Elder, I was indeed waiting for you there. But the ghost immortal suddenly chased after me. I cannot defeat him. Fortunately, Supreme Divinity Bai Zhe happened to pass by. I told him that I was a disciple of Invincible Sect. He saved me and brought me here. Chapter 260. Lone Moon thought about it carefully. When they were in the forest previously, they only cared about the remaining Yin Qi and neglected the remaining god power around them. After all, that place was close to Wuqi Mountain. It was normal for there to be god power. After I woke up, I mistook Supreme Divinity Qianyu for you. That's why I asked for the sect master's whereabouts. Xian Tong continued. Supreme Divinity Bai Zhe and Supreme Divinity Qianyu got into a fight. Then you guys came. So that's what happened. So was Bai Zhe who saved her. He turned to look at the person sitting at the head of the table. Qianyu's face was as black as ink. He looked like he was trying his best not to attack. Bai Zhe had obviously mistaken Qianyu for him and wanted to find out where Shining was. From his expression, Bai Zhe had been harassing him all these years. The corner of Lone Moon's mouth twitched. He said in a low voice, Since Shorty has been found, we won't disturb you anymore. He stood up. This was too embarrassing. They had better leave. Leave. The anger on Qianyu's face grew. He snorted and said, My 1,000 Feet Mountain is not a place where you can come and go as you please. You've destroyed so many of my crystal peaks. Are you going to go back on your words? Lone Moon's heart sank. He knew it would not be so easy to leave. Supreme Divinity Qianyu is too serious. We are not that kind of people. My invincible sect is a righteous sect. We have always been fair and impartial in our dealings. We're not biased, Lone Moon said seriously. So, every injustice has its perpetrator, and every debt has its debtor. Look for the culprit. Without hesitation, he threw the blame to Lone Moon. As long as the few of them could leave, it was fine. The others understood immediately. Therefore, all eyes in the room turned to look at a certain white figure. It's him, it's him, it's him. Our scapegoat. Baize, his expression stiffened. He finally turned to look at Qianyu. Perhaps because he was really in the wrong, he stepped forward and said, "This is indeed my fault. I will compensate you." With that said, he turned and walked out the door. Everyone looked at each other and followed him out. He stood on the platform in front of the palace and chanted a long string of strange incantations. Not long after, a huge array appeared under his feet. He waved his hand, and the formation began to rise slowly, growing larger and larger. In a short while, it had already enveloped half of the sky, and a bright white light shone. In the next moment, the ground shook, and a large number of crystal fragments rose into the air. As if they were being pulled by something, they began to gather and reform, forming many tall crystal peaks. As if time had been reversed, the crystal peaks that filled the sky once again appeared in the surroundings. There were no signs of damage at all. Everyone present was stunned. It was not that there were no sorcery spells that could repair damaged objects, and apart from Shuning, who did not know any sorcery, even Shorty would not find it difficult to repair a palace. But this was the first time they had seen an array that could repair hundreds of floating peaks in an instant. As expected of the primordial divine Beast Clan, Qianyu sighed as her eyes darkened. Baize had already turned around and walked straight towards Qianyu. With a turn of his hand, a blue pearl suddenly appeared in his hand. He handed it over and said, "This is the soul-suppressing pearl that you wanted. In this way, can we write off what happened before?" Qianyu took the soul-suppressing pearl, and something flashed across his eyes. After a while, he nodded and said, "In that case, I will not pursue the matter." He turned to look at the floating peaks in the sky, and suddenly thought of something. But the crystal peaks have been repaired, and more than 10 of the 81 palaces of the Thousand Mountains mountain have been destroyed. They should also be repaired as before. Baize nodded. "All right." With that said, he turned and flew towards the various floating peaks and began to repair the palaces. The palaces of the Thousand Mountains mountain were different from other places. Although most of them were not big, they were all in the crystal peaks. Some of the cave abodes were even more hidden and difficult to detect. That was why Baize's array previously did not repair the palaces above. But after all, they were only palaces. Compared to the crystal peaks, they were much simpler. More than 10 palaces could be repaired in, at most, 4 to 6 hours. But why did they have to repair it too? Lone Moon glared angrily at a certain person who was still circling around Foodie Shun. That kick he gave back then was really too light. "Wait, Shining, what are you doing? Put down that roof beam." "Help? Help my ass. The roof beam has been broken. Eat your fruits properly. Can't you go and slack off?" "Oh, and Baize, stop snatching Chef's plate. You destroyed this place. Can you have some self-awareness? Didn't you hear that Qianyu said that no one could leave before the repairs were completed? King retard. Do you still want to leave here or not?" Fadanyo felt so tired. Apart from Little Shorty, everyone else was a burden to him. "Little Shorty, come over for a while." Finally, there was only one palace left. Lone Moon heaved a sigh of relief and waved at Qiantong. Qiantong flew over directly. "Elder, what instructions do you have? I saw that when you made the seals just now, you were much slower than usual. Are you injured?" Qiantong's expression darkened. She lowered her head and said, "Yes, I'm slightly injured." "Give me your hand." Lone Moon first checked her meridians, then activated a bit of immortal chi. He put a finger between her brows and looked at her primordial spirit. He was shocked to find that although her body was not injured at all, for some reason, her primordial spirit was extremely unstable, as if it could come out at any time. "This is called a slight injury?" Lone Moon's expression darkened. How could this be? When they separated, she was clearly fine. Was it that ghost immortal who injured you? Qiantong nodded honestly. "Didn't I tell you to take care of yourself and run if you can't win?" Primordial spirit injuries were not like physical injuries. It was very difficult to heal. It looked like nothing, but if one was not careful, one's soul would be destroyed. The others also looked at little Shorty worriedly. Xiantong lowered her head even more and said apologetically, "I'm sorry, Elder Lone Moon. My cultivation level is too low. That's why. What are you apologizing for? This is not your fault." Lone Moon was a little irritated. She must have undergone the soul transfer spell before entering the Blood Soul Array. I Ching also checked her injuries and said in a low voice, "This body is not hers in the first place. Now that she has been injured by the ghost immortals In Chi, that's why her primordial spirit is unstable." Lone Moon fell silent. He looked at Xiantong beside him. Why did this unlucky child always get herself into trouble? Do you have a way? Shining turned to look at the person beside her. Bai Zhe, who was suddenly called out, paused. His eyes lit up. Yes. He nodded hard, faster than ever before. His gaze was fixed on Shun Ying's face for a while. Then he subconsciously turned his head away. His face was burning red. After a while, he said, "But you have to follow me back to Baiyun Mountain." Chapter 261. Do you really have a way to cure little Shorty? Lone Moon asked anxiously. Bai Zhe looked at Lone Moon. His blush faded a little, and he spoke more fluently. There's a spirit spring on White Cloud Mountain that can nourish the soul. Lone Moon was overjoyed. All right, let's go now. The few of them finished repairing the palace and flew back to the main hall. Lone Moon said to Qianyu, who was supervising them, "Supreme Divinity Qianyu, the palace has been repaired. Sorry for the disturbance. We are in a hurry to treat our disciples' injuries and will not stay any longer." Qianyu did not continue to make things difficult for them. He nodded and said, "Since the Thousand Mountains mountain has been repaired, I will not force you to stay." He turned to look in Xiantong's direction. As if guessing what they were thinking, he added, "This Miss Xiantong's primordial spirit is unstable. Even with the spirit spring, she needs immortal qi to protect her from time to time in order to recover. Thank you, Supreme Divinity Qianyu, for telling us." The few of them did not stay any longer. They all flew out on their flying swords. Qianyu conjured a seal, and the surrounding crystal peaks opened up a path to the outside world. "Aren't you coming?" Shining suddenly turned and asked. Qianyu paused. He looked around and realized that Shunning was asking about him. He thought about it carefully and remembered that this was the woman Bai Zhe had been waiting for all these years. He could not remember her name and replied, "It's not convenient for me to leave the Thousand Mountains mountain. Forgive me for not seeing you off." Shining tilted her head. "Why? Aren't you injured too?" Qianyu paled. Something flashed across his eyes. He immediately replied, "I was slightly injured when I fought with Bai Zhe just now. I'll be fine after resting for a while." "Oh." Shining did not ask further. Within seconds, they disappeared into the horizon. "Little Shorty, how are your injuries?" The moment they left the 1,000-feet mountain, Lone Moon summoned the huge fan-shaped Dharma artifact and pulled everyone over. He asked with a serious expression, "I'm fine for now." Xiantong shook her head. "My primordial spirit is only unstable. I'm not injured. As long as it's not an out-of-body spell, I'll be fine." Lone Moon nodded. "I didn't ask you before. Did you see the ghost immortal who attacked you clearly?" "This?" Xiantong frowned and said, "That person's entire body is filled with In Chi. My cultivation is too low, so I can't see his face clearly." "Is it a woman?" She thought about it carefully and shook her head. "No. Although I couldn't see his face clearly, his figure was definitely not that of a woman." Lone Moon and I Ching exchanged a look. Their expressions darkened. It looks like Mother Feng did not attack her. The other party's target is obvious. "It's Shorty's soul," I Ching said in a low voice. Chapter 262. As for why that Qianyu looks exactly like me, I don't know either. Perhaps it was a coincidence? Lone Moon frowned, suddenly remembering something. "Shining, don't you think?" He was just about to speak when Bai Zhe suddenly appeared beside the two of them, looking at Shunning eagerly. "Shun, come here. What's the matter?" Shunning lay on the table, not wanting to move. "Did something happen to Shorty?" Lone Moon stood up anxiously. Shorty had been soaking in the spirit spring for 3 days, and there was still no movement. No, she's fine. She can come out tomorrow. Now that it was Loneman's turn, his speech became smoother. There's just a place that I want to bring Shun Ing over to have a look. I'm not going. Shun Ing rejected immediately. She was not interested in anything that required movement. Bai Zhe froze and looked at her anxiously. Suddenly remembering something, he took out a bag and handed it over. Here. What? Shun Ing took it. The moment she pulled it open, something slid out. It was a long, slippery, and wet body. It fell on the table with a thud and kept twisting. What the hell? Could this be an octopus? Lone Moon poked the claw on the table with his fan. It's a 1,000-clawed beast, Bai Zhe replied, and turned to look at Shun Ing with a blushing face. Can I eat it? Nodding furiously, he thought for a moment and added, There are a lot of them, Father Nyo. Shun Ying's eyes brightened. It was written all over her face. Think, think, think. Seafood, seafood, seafood. For all, if you want to go, you go. I'm not going. Lone Moon glared at Foodie Shun. I don't want to help you carry your things. You should have said so earlier. Let's go. Shun Ing stood up quickly, grabbed Bai Zhe, and rushed out without looking back. I haven't had seafood in a long time. Wait. Lone Moon called out anxiously. Don't forget what we just said. Now got it. A reply came from the other side, and the figure completely disappeared. Lone Moon narrowed his eyes and sat back down. A while later, a certain chef walked out with a dish in each hand. He glanced at the empty seat and was stunned for a moment. Where's Master? He didn't even eat lunch. This was the first time. Lone Moon looked up at him. He was abducted by an octopus. I Ching's face darkened. Why didn't you stop, Master? Why should I stop her? Lone Moon asked in return. He looked at Chef, who looked like he wanted to kill someone. Something flashed across his eyes, and he sighed. AI, a grown girl, can't be kept at home. Instantly, I Ching's face darkened. He wanted to kill beasts. Bai Zhe brought Shun Ing to a huge lake. The lake water was so clear that one could see the bottom, like a sapphire falling onto the ground. The lake was so big that one couldn't even see the end of it. Furball, how do we catch it? Shun Ying's eyes brightened as a list of aquatic products flashed across her mind. Should I drain the water? Bai Zhe was stunned by her sparkling eyes. He blushed again and turned his head away as if he was scalded. Wait a minute. As he spoke, he took 2 quick steps and stopped at the side of the water. He conjured a seal, and a light flashed. A series of bubbles appeared on the surface of the lake. Suddenly, a figure emerged from the water. A middle-aged man floated on the surface of the water. He was dressed in black, but his lower body had octopus legs covered with suction cups. This was that octopus? 1,000 Claws greets the supreme divinity. The man bowed respectfully to Bai Zhe and swam to the shore while twisting his numerous legs. Bai Zhe nodded and regained his cold demeanor. He stretched out his hand and said, Give it to me. Supreme divinity, you finally made up your mind to clean up the demonic beasts in this lake. 1,000 Legs was overjoyed and excited. 1,000 Leaf Lake was just below White Cloud Mountain. Many demonic beasts had appeared in the water. Although they were all mutated aquatic beasts without sentience, there were too many of them. What's more, they would occasionally attack the gremlins that passed by. As time went by, no one dared to come here anymore. Some people begged the Supreme Divinity to help, but for some reason, the Supreme Divinity could not make up his mind to clean them up. He only sent 1,000 Legs to guard the lake to prevent the demonic beasts from hurting people. Now that the Supreme Divinity finally decided to get involved, 1,000 Legs felt energized. He hurriedly stretched out his hand and plucked a strand of hair. The strand of hair instantly turned into a wriggling octopus leg. He handed it over with both hands. Supreme Divinity, I'm ready. Bai Zhe took it and turned to hand it to Shun Ing. Fishing. How? Shun Ing glanced at the octopus leg that was thicker than a thigh. She only knew how to eat. This leg was suitable for barbecuing. Exalted Goddess. 1,000 Legs hurriedly explained, Demonic beasts are most familiar with my aura. As long as you throw this into the water, you will naturally be able to lure them out. Shun Ing took the octopus leg and turned to ask, Won't it hurt? Although he had many legs, 1,000 Legs laughed. Exalted goddess, you worry too much. This is formed from my hair. It only carries my aura. It's not a real leg. Oh. She threw it into the water and instantly flew a few hundred meters away. Just as it was about to fall into the water, the originally calm lake's surface suddenly turned into a huge wave. Tins of huge black fish broke through the water. Their green scales shone with a golden light when the sun shone on them. The one at the front bit the octopus leg and fell into the water. As if they had discovered the people on the shore, they turned and rushed over. The waves on the lake were instantly more than 100 feet high. One could faintly see hundreds of pairs of blood-red eyes staring at them. Oh no, it's actually a school of green, sand demonic fish. Thousand Legs was shocked. This type of demonic fish usually lived in schools. There were tens to hundreds of them in a school. They were huge and very ferocious. Supreme Divinity, why don't we? Before he could finish, Baizé just raised his hand and waved. In an instant, tens of thousands of wind blades flew toward the waves and hit the school of demonic fish. In the next moment, the huge wave subsided. A school of human-sized fish floated on the surface of the lake. Thousand Legs, as expected of a supreme divinity. Shining had already rushed over excitedly to pick up the fish. She grabbed one fish with each hand. There were so many fish. She had to get Chef to boil them, steam them, roast them, and grill them one by one. Furball, this method of yours is really effective. Baizé's face turned red. He hurriedly followed and then silently took out a storage bag and handed it over. Shenying's eyes lit up. She took it and patted his shoulder hard. With a serious expression, she said, I like people like you who know what to do. With that said, she opened the storage bag and started stuffing fish into it. Baizé's entire body froze. The redness on his face and his black hair were instantly dyed red. He vaguely felt something explode, and his mind went blank. She just said like. Oh, asterisk. Q after a long time. He finally replied in a low voice, Me too. Chapter 263. Shining had collected most of the fish. The storage bag that Furball gave her seemed to be especially big. Even after collecting more than 100 fish, it was still not full. Furball, are there any other aquatic products? The man, who had been frozen for a long time, finally regained his composure and nodded. Yes. With that said, he flew up into the sky, clenched his fist by his side, and reached out to Shining. I'll bring you there. All right. Shining jumped onto the cloud. Let's go. Baizé retracted his hand in disappointment. Shining turned to Thousand Legs. That a fish bait? Octopus? What's that again? Thousand Legs, Baizé reminded. Oh, brother Thousand Legs. Let's go. Don't fall behind. Thousand Legs, she called him fish bait just now. She definitely did, right? Supreme Divinity, are you really here to clean up the aquatic demonic beasts? But why are you collecting the corpses of the demonic beasts? Some demonic beasts that don't even have inner cores are useless to bring back. Thousand Legs followed her with a confused look. But the same thing happened again. He pulled out his hair to attract the demonic beasts, and then the Supreme Divinity killed them. The two of them happily went down to pick up the corpses, and they didn't even ask for his help. This happened many times until they went around the entire lake. Thousand Legs suddenly had a scary guess. Supreme Divinity didn't clean up the demonic beasts in the lake all these years. Was she purposely keeping them so that this exalted goddess could come and pick up the corpses? No, my Supreme Divinity definitely doesn't have such a hobby. It must be an illusion. An hour later, Supreme Divinity, Thousand Legs said weakly, Why don't we stop here for today? Baizé finally turned to look at him. Are the demonic beasts in the lake all gone? No. The demonic beasts are not all gone, but I'm almost done pulling out my hair. Pulling out 1 or 2 strands of hair at a time was nothing. It didn't affect his cultivation, and he usually lost quite a lot of hair. But he couldn't keep pulling it out. If this went on, he would really go bald. Baizé, Shining glanced at his obviously shiny head and coughed. Then let's go back. Chef should be done cooking. All right. Baizé turned to fly back. Wait. Shining suddenly spoke. She divided the storage bags in her hands into 3 equal portions and handed them to Thousand Legs. "Here, yours." Thousand Legs glanced at the bag with a dumbfounded expression. What was this for? Dismemberment? Or a threat? The Thousand Claws is from the Water Tribe. These demonic beasts do not have spiritual intelligence and do not have inner dawn, so they are useless to him, Baizé explained. So, he doesn't eat seafood? Shining paused. After thinking for a while, she reached into her pocket and took out a pearl. She handed it to Thousand Legs and said, "Why don't I give you this? Chef gave it to me. He has no use for it, but you should be able to use it." This is a Dragon Ball. Thousand Claw's eyes widened and he rubbed his eyes. Only a natural-born true dragon would be born with a dragon pearl, which was used for inheritance. Although the divine power inside the dragon pearl was no longer useful to the dragon tribe, it was a treasure to the other water tribe. Although the water tribe had the possibility of cultivating to become a true dragon, not everyone had this opportunity. With the dragon pearl, things would be much easier. Exalted goddess, you really want to give it to me? Thousand Legs was stunned by this huge surprise. You don't want it? Chef said that the pearl was very bright and useful, so he gave her a few. There was still a pile of them. Thousand Legs immediately bowed. Thank you, exalted goddess. Here, Shun Ying stuffed the pearl into his hands. Thousand Legs was very touched. Indeed, the supreme divinity knew all good gods. Exalted goddess, don't worry, your hair will grow back. Shining thought about it and added, Hair. Could she not mention hair? Goodbye, brother Fishbait. He really wasn't called Fishbait. Baizé did not stay any longer. He took Shining and flew away on a cloud. He was extremely fast. In a moment, he had already flown across the entire lake and was flying towards the top right corner. Halfway there, he suddenly thought of something and said hesitantly, I have a pearl too. Do you want it? Oh, can it glow? No, it can. Then I don't want it. Baizé lowered his head sadly. I mean, furball. Are you lost? They did not fly for so long when they just arrived. Baizé stiffened. A hint of panic flashed across his face. After a while, he said, No. Oh. Shining did not mind. She continued to look at the bag of aquatic products with satisfaction. Baizé heaved a sigh of relief. With a thought, he sped up and flew upward. In a short while, he saw the hall in the clouds. They had come out from the front hall, but now they were at the back of the mountain. He brought Shunning directly to a place in the back palace that was covered by auspicious clouds. This was a sea of flowers. Pure white, jade-like flowers were blooming all over the place. Each flower seemed to be exquisitely carved, and they even carried a faintly discernible fragrance. The flowers were surrounded by thick god power. It was almost tangible. From afar, it looked like they were blooming on a blue god power. Do you like it? Baizé asked nervously. He looked straight into Shun Ying's eyes, as if this was a very important question. What? Shining was a little curious why he suddenly stopped flying. She looked at the sea of flowers in front of her and realized that he was asking about flowers. It's all right. Chapter 265. After soaking in the spirit spring for 4 whole days, Shorty finally woke up. Lone Moon called out to her and asked her to call Baizé to gather at Shun Ying's side hall. Lone Moon then turned around to look for Chef. Chef looked as if he had not rested well. His little body was listless, as if he had met with some difficult problem. Especially after seeing Shun Ying, he looked as if he wanted to say something, but stopped himself. Even his cooking skills were obviously not as good as before. Lone Moon glanced at the breakfast on the table. This was a table of soulless breakfast. He glanced at a certain someone who was calmly eating. His mouth twitched. Damn it, she was eating with relish. Why did she dislike his cooking so much in the past? He looked around and realized that one person was missing. Where's Baizé? Elder, I did not find Supreme Divinity Baizé. Shorty answered. I searched the entire Baiyin Mountain and did not see him. Lone Moon's expression turned cold. He glared at a certain foodie and turned to I Ching. Chef, you go. You could do whatever you want. Just bring him here. I Ching, who was still in a daze, his eyes lit up. He was instantly energized. All right. With that said, he disappeared at the door in a flash. He looked very excited. Shorty. Elder I Ching went to look for someone, right? But why did he have to bring a sword and look so murderous? After all, his cultivation was high. Shorty could not find him all over the mountain. Chef brought him back in less than 20 minutes. But both of them were covered in dust and looked very disheveled, especially Bai Zhe. His originally pure white clothes were stained with large patches and his face was green. Coming. Chef muttered and kept his sword. He took small steps and walked behind, shunning out of habit. As if realizing that his vision was blocked, he turned and moved a chair. He climbed onto it and looked over Shen Ying's head. He stared fearfully at Bai Zhe, who entered the room. Little bitch, don't you dare lie to my master. I will keep my eyes on you. Bai Zhe, on the other hand, saw Shen sitting in front of him the moment he entered the house. He seemed to have thought of something. His originally angry expression changed instantly, and his face turned red. His entire body was as red as a shrimp. He turned and wanted to fly away. Lone Moon was quick to react. He sealed the door with a spell and set up a few isolation arrays. Hey, that's enough. We have something serious to talk to you about. With that said, he turned to glare at the lazy bum at the table. Shen, what's with Settle your problem first. Oh. Shen then stood up and walked towards Bai Zhe. She looked straight into his eyes and said, You ran too fast yesterday. I didn't have time to reply to you. Bai Zhe's heart skipped a beat. His entire face burned. Shen, thank you, but I don't accept it. Bai Zhe stiffened. The flush on his face instantly faded. Then I don't like you. I won't like it in the future either. I never loved. Shen patted his shoulder comfortingly. Then, she turned and sat back in her chair. Lone Moon, Xian Tong, this was a heart-wrenching scene? Wasn't it too simple and crude? Xian Tong looked at Lone Moon weakly. Elder, why do I feel that Supreme Divinity is a little pitiful? It's better to get the pain over with. Shen rejected him a long time ago. She's experienced. Then will he be all right? Don't worry, it's just a breakup. He won't die. And it was a crush. But he looks so sad. He's squatting in the corner. He's petrified. It feels like he's going to be blown away. Is he really all right? Cough. Well, let's talk about serious matters. Lone Moon stepped forward and said seriously. Elder was changing the topic, wasn't he? Little Shorty, is your primordial spirit all right? He suddenly asked. Xian Tong nodded. She looked gratefully at the person who was still squatting in the corner. Supreme Divinity's spirit spring is really amazing. I feel that my primordial spirit is much more condensed than before. Even my cultivation is showing signs of breaking through. I believe we can return to the immortal realm soon. We can't return to the immortal realm for the time being. Lone Moon's expression darkened. Because it's not just you who is having problems with your primordial spirit. Chef is also having problems. As soon as he finished speaking, everyone except Shen was shocked. What? Xian Tong stood up abruptly. Elder I Ching is also injured. How can that be? Isn't he already a divine being? Who can injure? Why are you all looking at me? She stopped mid-sentence. She realized that everyone in the room was staring at her with wide eyes. What's wrong? Little Shorty. Lone Moon pointed below her. Xian Tong looked down and saw a familiar body on the table. It was her body, and she was floating in mid-air, completely transparent. How can this be? Xian Tong screamed. Subconsciously, she scurried back. In an instant, the figure on the table sat up again. Xian Tong's soul had returned. Indeed, there's still a problem with little Shorty's soul. Lone Moon's expression darkened. That's impossible. Even Bai Zhe, who was standing in the corner, was shocked by little Shorty's sudden departure. He turned to look at her. My spirit spring does have the effect of nourishing souls. I've checked her primordial spirit and confirmed that it has been repaired. Why would her soul leave her body for no reason? This has nothing to do with her primordial spirit, Lone Moon said. It's because her soul is missing a piece. You mean that remnant soul? I Ching suddenly thought of the array that Mother Feng had set up. She is. You and Bai Zhe aren't? What do you mean? Haven't you realized? Lone Moon scanned them from head to toe. That both of your souls are missing something? Bai Zhe, I Ching, Lomun's brows furrowed. His expression became even more serious. Shining, and I only just realized this. At first, we thought that only little Shorty had a problem, especially after we saw the remnant soul in the array in the underworld. But when I examined little Shorty, apart from the fact that her primordial spirit was unstable, I didn't find any problems with her soul. At first, I thought that the remnant soul was left behind before little Shorty was reincarnated. The power of reincarnation restored little Shorty's soul, so it was just a remnant soul from her previous life. But if the soul was complete, the remnant soul should have dissipated, Bai Zhe said. That's right. Lonmu nodded. The strange thing is that the remnant soul has existed for more than a day or two. That proves that it wasn't from before she reincarnated. But little Shorty was completely fine until she was injured by the ghost immortals Yin Chi. Then, Shining reminded me that when Chef was in the egg, he also encountered the ghost immortals Yin Chi. That's why I checked on him. Although it wasn't obvious, his primordial spirit was indeed showing signs of disorder. Chapter 266. I Ching paused and instinctively checked his own essence soul. His face paled. I thought it was because of this body of mine. That's why it's the exact opposite. Lone Moon said in a low voice. It's because your soul is incomplete that your body has always been like this. I Ching frowned. His expression darkened. And then there's Bai Zhe, me? Bai Zhe paused. When you fought with Qian Yu that day, we were right beside you. Lone Moon pointed to a certain foodie beside him. She saw that there was something wrong with you, so we decided to follow you back to White Cloud Mountain. Shun. Bai Zhe's heart warmed. He instinctively looked at Shunning. Suddenly, he thought of something and his expression fell again. He exuded an aura of grievance. After a while, he said, but there's nothing wrong with my essence soul. There's nothing wrong with your essence soul, but I'm not sure about the rest. Bai Zhe paused. What did that mean? There are countless demonic beasts in the lake under White Cloud Mountain, right? Lone Moon rolled his eyes at the foodie. Didn't you take Shining to see them yesterday? Those demonic beasts didn't exist before, right? Indeed, they didn't exist before. Do you know where they came from? Bai Zhe paused. I don't know either. They just appeared recently. I remember that back in the Three Azure Realms, you stayed with the Yi family for tens of thousands of years. Lone Moon continued. None of the demonic beasts in the Mirage Sea dared to come ashore. Back in the divine realm, your divine power should be even stronger. Why did demonic beasts dare to appear near your residence? And all of them are low-level demonic beasts with no spiritual intelligence? He didn't think about this problem. At that time, he just wanted to recuperate first. When Shining came over, she would definitely be happy. The only explanation is that there's something wrong with your soul, affecting your powers. It's just that this effect is so small that you didn't notice it at all. Lone Moon poured himself a cup of tea and took a sip before continuing. You're from the divine race. The demonic beasts with spiritual intelligence naturally know how powerful you are and don't dare to come close. And the low-level demonic beasts can only sense danger instinctively. They don't know who you are. The White Spirit Mountain was rich in divine power, making it the best place to cultivate. Now that Bai Zhe's soul was in trouble, these demonic beasts without intelligence would not be able to sense the danger and would naturally swarm over. Bai Zhe fell silent. It was indeed possible. So Shunning went fishing with him yesterday because she was worried, but she said she didn't like him at all. Heartbroken. Elder, you mean to say that all three of us had a strand of our soul extracted, but we didn't notice it? Xian Tong asked worriedly. You are indeed missing a remnant soul, and we have found this remnant soul, but we haven't thought of a way to let it return. But I Ching and Bai Zhe were just guessing. Lone Moon frowned. A remnant soul is different from a complete soul. We can't tell if the soul is complete. I have an idea, Bai Zhe suddenly said. Everyone was stunned. They all turned to look at him. Bai Zhe turned his hand, and a bronze mirror the size of a palm appeared in his hand. This is the life mirror, my lifelong Dharma artifact. Through this mirror, you can see a person's past and present life. But you have to have a complete soul. If you don't have a complete soul, you won't be able to see anything in the mirror. So it could be used to check if they were missing a remnant soul. Longmun's eyes lit up. He immediately carried Chef down from the stool. Then let's take a look. I Ching was not paying attention and was squeezed in front of the mirror. He and Bai Zhe glared at each other at close range, then looked at the mirror. Bai Zhe immediately activated the life mirror in his hand. A white light flashed across the surface of the mirror, but it was completely white inside. Only Father Nyo's reflection could be seen. His hand was still empty. In an instant, the three of them's expressions darkened. Indeed, they guessed correctly. Bai Zhe and Chef's souls were in trouble. The three of us have interacted with the ghost immortal. It must be done by the same person. Xiantong looked worried. But why did he want to extract our remnant souls? Remnant souls were not like complete souls and spirits. If they were missing, it would not have much effect on the body. Over time, they would recover on their own. It might not be the three of you. Shining, who had been silent all this while, suddenly spoke. There are others who have interacted with the ghost immortal. Everyone was stunned. I Ching, who was still in Longmun's hand, was the first to react. His eyes widened. Those two drama queens. His expression darkened. A look of panic flashed across his face. He hurriedly looked at the person in front of the table. Master, let's go. Shining patted her butt and stood up. I'm full. Breakfast. The three of them exchanged glances, then turned and began to fly on their swords. Bai Zhe and Xiantong could only follow, confused. Elder Longmun, who are the drama queens? Xiantong could not help but ask. Chef's cheap parents. Elder I Ching's ancestor's surname was Drama. Didn't divine race have family surnames? She had never heard of Drama. What Shining said was not impossible. If Little Shorty and the others had lost a sliver of their remnant souls because they had interacted with the ghost immortal, then Feng San, who had made friends with the ghost immortal, could have interacted with them before. He was familiar with Zhu Ming and had been to the underworld more than once. There was also Long Zhan. Although she had never met a ghost immortal, she had guarded the dragon egg for so many years. She did not even sense the Yin-Chi in the egg. If the ghost immortal had really taken her remnant soul, she should not have known. Reality proved that they were not thinking too much. Feng San and Long Zhan did not appear in Bai Zhe's life mirror at all. How can this be? Long Zhan was confused. With her and Feng San's cultivation levels, how could anyone take away their souls without them knowing? Even if it was just a remnant soul. From what I know, ghost immortals are all very strong. Ordinary divine race members are not their match. But given Little Zhan's and my cultivation levels, we can fight them to a draw. Feng San said in a low voice, but there is no ghost immortal who is much stronger than us and can take away a sliver of our remnant souls. Why did we? He looked confused. If I Ching, the son who ran away with his master, had not suddenly returned to tell them this, they would not even have known that they had lost a sliver of their remnant souls. Can't you guess who did it? Longmun asked anxiously. The two exchanged a look and shook their heads. Their expressions darkened. We don't know. What's more, why would the other party want a sliver of our remnant souls? Do you have a way to find your remnant souls? Longmun asked. After all, they were divine race members. The two shook their heads. A remnant soul is different from the 3 spiritual and 7 physical souls. We did not even notice that a sliver of our remnant soul was missing. How can we find its location? But we can ask someone what the other party wants a remnant soul for, Feng San suddenly said. Everyone was stunned. Bai Zhe suddenly thought of something. You mean Hong Yu? That's right. Feng San nodded. Supreme Divinity Hong Yu is the oldest god in the divine realm. If there's anyone who knows the most about souls, it's probably him. Long Zhan reacted as well. Then let's go to Ling Time Mountain immediately. As she spoke, she was about to turn when the air in the hall suddenly twisted. It was as if someone had torn space apart. A black figure suddenly appeared in the hall. Chapter 267. Brother Feng, I have an urgent matter that I need your help with. The person who broke through the void was Zhu Ming. He looked at Feng San anxiously. Brother Zhu? You are. Feng San hesitated. He did not expect Zhu Ming to appear so suddenly and in such a manner. Although breaking through the void could allow one to travel thousands of miles in an instant, it took a lot of energy to do so. Unless it was a matter of life and death, ghost immortals would not use it easily. Zhu Ming, on the other hand, looked anxious. Brother Feng, may I ask where the 3 people who entered the underworld the last time are now? He stopped mid-sentence. Then he saw Shun Ying and the others standing at the side. His eyes brightened, and he immediately turned and cupped his fists. That's great. Everyone is here. Mother Feng. Something happened to Mother Feng. What happened to her? Lone Moon stepped forward and asked, shocked. I don't know what happened either. Her soul suddenly became very unstable. Zhu Ming's expression was one of panic. He scanned the area before his gaze landed on Shun Ying. Exalted Goddess, please save Mother Feng. He had already noticed that this exalted goddess Shun's cultivation level was not as low as it seemed on the surface. If anyone could save Mother Feng, it would be them. He had no other choice, which was why he had come here. Shun Ying and Lone Moon exchanged a look. They decided to go and take a look. After all, the fact that they were missing a remnant soul probably had something to do with Mother Feng. Let's go and take a look at Mother Feng first. Lone Moon instructed Feng San and Longzhen. I'll have to trouble you 2 divine supremacies to go to the Ling Time Mountain and ask about the remnant soul first. The 2 of them looked at them worriedly. But you? Feng San looked confused. He did not understand why Zhu Ming did not come here to ask for his help, but to look for his son's seemingly weak master. He wanted to stop them, but Longzhen glared at him. He swallowed his words. Thank you, everyone. Seeing that they had agreed, Zhu Ming hurriedly thanked them. Then, he anxiously led them across the void. The few of them felt their vision darken. The next moment, they found themselves in the underworld. Ghostly chi filled the air, and wandering souls were everywhere. In front of them was an unfamiliar palace surrounded by thick yin chi. It was obvious that this was Zhu Ming's residence. However, half of the originally tall hall had collapsed. From time to time, sharp and ear-piercing screams could be heard, and the red light of the array formation could be faintly seen inside. Mother Feng is inside, Zhu Ming said anxiously as he led everyone in. Only then did they see that the inside of the hall had been destroyed even more severely. There were broken walls everywhere, and only a restrictive array formation was lit up at the very center. The person in the formation was Mother Feng. She had reverted to her crazy self and was attacking the formation that trapped her. Her eyes were bloodshot and her face was contorted in pain. More importantly, there were 9 Mother Fengs in the formation, and from time to time, they would let out cries of resentment, hatred, and anger. The force of their attacks on the formation was getting stronger and stronger, and the formation was on the verge of collapsing. Mother Feng, Zhu Ming exclaimed. He immediately went forward and conjured a seal to stabilize the array. Her soul was split. Lone Moon was shocked. He turned to look at Zhu Ming. What happened? Logically speaking, souls should be connected to each other. As long as they weren't in the soul-splitting formation, they should be able to gather together. Why did Mother Feng seem to be getting more and more scattered? I don't know either. She suddenly became like this. No matter what I did, her soul could not gather together. I could only trap her here, Zhu Ming explained as he set up the array. He looked at Shun Ying pleadingly. I had no choice but to trouble all of you. Last time, all of you were able to destroy the soul-splitting formation. Can you tell what happened to Mother Feng this time? Lone Moon frowned. We can't tell what happened to her either. Mother Feng was different from Chef and the others. What she lacked was a primary soul, not a remnant soul. Zhu Ming looked disappointed. He became even more anxious. Inside the array, Mother Feng's attacks were getting weaker and weaker. Perhaps she was tired, or perhaps her scattered soul could no longer withstand the torment. But the shrill cries were getting louder and louder. They seemed to be filled with hatred and indignation. Every word reverberated in the eerie underworld. I hate you. Why did you do this to me? Why? Heaven fall, yellow springs, to be together forever. Ha ha, liars, all liars. I won't die. I won't die. Even if I become a ghost forever and never reincarnate, I will drag you down to hell with me. The great Tao is heartless. Cutting off one's emotions to gain enlightenment is all a lie. Give me back my life. Give it back to me. The cries were getting louder and louder. Suddenly, black chi appeared around Mother Fang's translucent soul. It did not look like the yin chi of a ghost immortal, nor did it look like demonic chi. It was filled with anger, as if it wanted to destroy everything in its path. Grievous energy. Zhu Ming's eyes widened in disbelief. How is this possible? Although those who were able to cultivate to the level of ghost immortal had died with great resentment, this was the underworld. The Yin River of the underworld would take away all the resentment of ghosts, preventing them from falling into madness. Therefore, ghost immortals would not easily leave the underworld. But Mother Fang's soul had already split. Why would she still have so much grievous energy? Zhu Ming's eyes widened. Suddenly, he thought of something. His face turned even paler. Could it be that she still can't let it go? There's one less soul inside, Xian Tong suddenly exclaimed. Everyone was shocked. They turned around to take a closer look. Indeed, only 8 of the original 9 Mother Fang were left. The grievous energy around the soul was getting stronger and stronger. In a short while, all 5 of them were covered in a thick, black, grievous energy. It was gathering towards the center, as if some invisible force was pulling it apart. Grievous energy gathering souls, Bai Zhe said in shock. The grievous energy was gathering her scattered souls. No, Mother Fang will be swallowed by the grievous energy. Zhu Ming looked even more worried. He conjured a few hand seals, but there was no reaction. On the other side, Mother Fang's scattered souls had completely gathered together. The raging cries had also stopped. Mother Fang was dressed in a long black robe. Her hair was messy as she stood in the middle of the array. 2 streaks of bloody tears flowed down her cheeks. She suddenly quietened down. Her madness was gone. They did not know if it was an illusion, but the red light in her eyes seemed to have grown brighter. His eyes were fixed on this side. Suddenly, he grinned and revealed a sinister smile. Mother Fang. Zhu Ming subconsciously took a step forward. The smile on Mother Fang's face widened until the corners of her mouth reached her ears. Her eyes bulged so much that they looked like they were about to pop out of her eye sockets. A creepy laugh suddenly sounded. He. You're an accomplice too. All of you deserve to die. Give me back my life, will you? Little junior brother? You remember? Zhu Ming's eyes widened. He froze. Mother Fang waved her sleeves. The grievous energy filled the air, accompanied by shrill cries, rushed towards Zhu Ming. Even the yin chi around them was pushed back. It looked like it was about to swallow Zhu Ming whole. Zhu Ming, Lone Moon exclaimed. He sent a beam of sword chi at Zhu Ming, pushing him away. That was how he managed to avoid the grievous energy. The ground rumbled. The palace that was already in ruins was now a pile of rubble. Chapter 268. Zhu Ming crawled up from the ground in a daze. Suddenly, he thought of something and looked at the array anxiously. Mother Fang. The figure in the array had disappeared. Even the grievous energy had disappeared into the array. He stood in the array, panicking. What happened? Why did Mother Fang suddenly disappear? Where did she go? I Ching frowned and stepped forward to check the array on the ground. This array is not broken. I don't think she broke out of it. Then where did she go? Zhu Ming was getting more anxious. He conjured a few seals to search for her aura. After a while, he put his hands down in disappointment. I can't find her aura. Also, there are no signs of other arrays being activated. Could it be that she broke through the void? Bai Zhe asked. No. I Ching shook his head. There were no signs of any sorcery just now. Everyone's expressions were solemn. The array was not broken, and there were no signs of other arrays. How did she disappear? Zhu Ming's expression was one of despair. It was as if all his energy had been sucked out of him. He fell to the ground. Where did she go? Souls can attract each other, right? Shining suddenly asked. Everyone paused, and then reacted. Soul summoning technique. Mother Fang lost her primary soul. Zhu Ming said anxiously. You're saying that someone used her primary soul to summon the other souls away? But He changed his mind and his face darkened. I clearly trapped her with an array just now. What kind of soul-summoning array in this world can use just one main soul to summon all the other souls? There is. Shining nodded. Haven't you guys seen it before? Zhu Ming paused. A moment later, he seemed to have thought of something. His eyes widened and he exclaimed in unison, "That mystic realm array." Back then, that array was able to pull Shorty from the immortal realm all the way to the divine realm with just a sliver of her remnant soul. She's in her own residence. Zhu Ming regained his senses and turned to fly to the right. Lone Moon and the others exchanged a look and flew up on their swords. Mas. I Ching turned to pull Shun Ying onto the sword out of habit. Halfway through, he seemed to have thought of something. His body stiffened, and the look in his eyes became even more complicated. Shining, however, did not seem to notice at all. She stood behind Chef and said, "Let's go." "Yes, Mas." He did not know why he did not want to say the last word. He looked at Shining, confused. Seeing that she did not notice, he chased after her. Bai Zhe, on the other hand, glanced at the two of them and frowned. His face was filled with grievance. Zhu Ming seemed to be very anxious. He flew very quickly. Lone Moon frowned and glanced at Zhu Ming, who seemed to be in a state of panic. Zhu Ming had completely lost his composure. In a low voice, Lone Moon said, "Fellow Taoist Zhu, don't you think you should explain to us your relationship with Mother Feng?" Previously, he had mentioned that Mother Feng was his junior sister, and it didn't seem like they were close. But now, it didn't seem like that was the case. Zhu Ming's face paled. He looked at Lone Moon guiltily. A moment later, he closed his eyes and sighed. "It's not that I'm hiding this from you on purpose. It's just that Mother Feng is too stubborn. I'm afraid that something bad will happen to her again. That's why I purposely did not mention the past. She's indeed not my junior sister. She's my senior sister." Zhu Ming's expression became even more complicated. "When she was alive, we were from the same sect. We grew up together. Later, she ascended to immortality before I did. By the time I ascended, she had already been killed by evil people. I became a ghost immortal because of her. But ghost immortals cultivate at the expense of their souls. The higher their cultivation level, the weaker their souls. Although Mother Feng managed to get her revenge after she became a ghost immortal, the hatred in her heart only deepened. Her cultivation became more and more extreme. I was worried that if this went on, her soul would dissipate one day. I wanted to persuade her to forget the past and reincarnate with me, but she refused." Zhu Ming clenched his fists by his side. His expression became even more sorrowful. After that, she lost her primary soul in an accident and forgot everything. I hoped that I could coax her to reincarnate first and then slowly find her primary soul. That was better than having her soul destroyed. But I did not expect her hatred to be so strong. Even without her primary soul, she still remembers what happened in the past. "Fellow Taoist Lone Moon," Zhu Ming said seriously, "I'm really sorry. I was afraid that if I brought up the past in front of Mother Feng, I might agitate her. That's why I did not tell her about what happened between us. Her soul is extremely weak now. It could dissipate at any time. If we don't send her to reincarnation soon, I'm afraid she won't have the chance to reincarnate again." Lone Moon looked at him, unsure of what he meant. He did not continue asking. Zhu Ming flew even faster. Mother Feng's residence was not far. In less than 10 minutes, they arrived. At that moment, there was a red light in front of them. Large numbers of wandering souls were fleeing in panic. Several arrays lit up where the palace used to be. They could vaguely make out the entrance to the mystic realm. "Mother Feng!" Zhu Ming exclaimed. He rushed toward the entrance of the mystic realm. "Zhu!" Lone Moon wanted to stop him, but it was too late. He could only turn around and give the others a look, reminding them to set up a defensive array. Then, he followed Zhu Ming in. In an instant, a red light filled their vision. It was still the small mystic realm that was full of arrays. Chapter 269. The black figure paused, and even the red light around it seemed to slow down. In the next moment, the black chi around the figure disappeared, slowly turning into light blue god power. A face that looked exactly like Father Nyo's appeared. I thought that you would only realize it after a while, Qianyu said coldly. Qianyu said coldly. She raised her head and looked over, as if she did not want to hide anything anymore. That's fine too. Let's all become sacrifices for this array. With that, he suddenly waved his hand at everyone. Immediately, the exit of the mystic realm behind them closed, and an array that looked exactly like the one below appeared in the sky. Before they could react, they felt their bodies become heavy. Their internal auras became unstable, and they could not even fly on their swords. They fell from the sky. The red light of the array became even brighter, turning the surroundings blood red. Everyone felt their primordial spirits become unstable, as if they were about to break out of their bodies. Baizé forced himself to set up an array and pulled everyone inside. Only then did the feeling of their souls being cut up stop. You've been hiding your cultivation all this time. Baizé looked at Qianyu in shock as he supported the array. He had fought with Qianyu more than 100 times. He knew his cultivation best. Qianyu still looked serious and upright. It's not that I've been hiding my cultivation. It's just that I'm not the same as before. It's all thanks to your remnant soul. So it was you who took away everyone's remnant soul, Qian Tong exclaimed. Qian Yu's expression darkened. He took a deep breath and said, "It's said that the Bai Zhe family is the only divine race that has existed since the beginning of the world. They were born in the chaos and were the divine beasts that the three gods of creation used to chase away ghosts. Souls are different from other people's. If I want to activate this array, I need your remnant soul. You need my remnant soul to increase your cultivation? Only when I'm strong enough can I do what I want. But now it's not enough." He frowned, as if he had made up his mind about something. Suddenly, he waved his hand in the direction of the crowd. Lone Moon felt a strong suction force, and his body flew out uncontrollably. The next moment, he was in Qianyu's hand. "Father Nyo, Lone Moon." Everyone was shocked, but Qianyu had already struck Lone Moon's chest with her palm. She used all of her strength in an attempt to pull Lone Moon's soul out of his body. With a flash of red light, he suddenly withdrew his hand. However, nothing happened. Not even half a shadow of Lone Moon's body floated out, not to mention his soul. The two of them maintained the posture of one grabbing and the other being grabbed, staring at each other. Lone Moon, Qianyu, everyone, the scene was a little awkward. How is this possible? "I actually can. Actually, you can shut up." Before he could finish, I Ching squeezed in between them, his expression dark. He interrupted, "My master does not have god power. If you don't want to die, hurry up and recover. It's just a remnant soul. I'm fine. Shun, I'm the only divine being here. No one else can help you. I don't need your help. Supreme divinity, don't stand on ceremony." Baizé, annoying. I Ching, little b asterisk tch. Crackle, crackle, crackle. The air crackled with electricity. Lone Moon, Shanning, Qian Tong, they could still quarrel. "Looks like he's really fine." Underscore, Mother Phone. Mother Phone was in a terrible state. Baizé was just a remnant soul, while Mother Phone was the primary soul. Shinning looked back and forth between the two of them. She did not want to continue fighting. "Qianyu, Mother Phone has no grudge against you. Why are you doing this?" Zhu Ming asked angrily. Qianyu snorted. "Ghost immortals should not exist in this world. I'm doing this for the entire divine realm." "You?" Zhu Ming was livid. He clearly did not believe Shun Ying's explanation. He summoned his weapon and was about to snatch the primary soul back. Mother Phone, who was in a frenzy in his arms, suddenly rushed out. Her almost transparent body was suddenly filled with grievous energy. The blackness was so thick that it looked like ink was about to drip out of it. Tears of blood flowed out of her eyes as she rushed towards Qianyu. "Bian Xinshin, return my life." Chapter 270. Mother Phone was extremely fast. Her grievous energy seemed to be able to devour everything. Shinning subconsciously took a few steps back. Qianyu was sent flying by her. The grievous energy around him seemed to be able to corrode everything. His Dharma robes melted and even his flesh started to corrode. His bones could be seen. Suddenly, a golden light flashed across his body, and Mother Foam was sent flying. The image of a golden lotus appeared around him, enveloping him completely. The grievous energy around him dissipated as well. He took a deep breath and looked at Mother Foam in horror. You are? Zhu Ming seemed to have thought of something. He looked at Qian Yu in disbelief. Qian Yu snorted. His face, which looked exactly like Father Nyo's, began to change. His disguise slowly faded. In a few moments, he had become a completely different person. It really is you. Zhu Ming's eyes widened. He was shocked. You? How is this possible? Mother Foam, who had been sent flying, continued to charge forward. Bian Xinchen, I'm going to kill you, I'm going to kill you. She had completely lost her mind. Every time she was sent flying by the golden light, she would charge forward again and again. Every time she charged forward, her soul body would grow fainter and the grievous energy around her would grow thicker. She was about to be swallowed up by the grievous energy. Zhu Ming once again used his sorcery to stop her from killing herself. He looked up angrily at the person in front of him. Bian Xinchen, you're still alive? No wonder Mother Foam refused to reincarnate all these years. Her enemy was not dead at all, and he had become supreme divinity Qian Yu. Of course I won't die before I complete my great Tao. He looked at Shuning fearfully and took another step back. Mother Foam is the biggest obstacle in my great Tao. Obstacle. Zhu Ming clenched his fists, his expression furious. Bian Xinchen, do you still have a heart? She's your wife. She treated you wholeheartedly. She has never let you down. What did you do to her? In order to complete your great Tao, you destroyed her cultivation, took out her immortal bones, and made her die of grievous hatred. You've already caused her so much harm. What more do you want? Bian Xinchen did not look the least bit guilty. He remained calm. To complete my great Tao, I have to make sacrifices. Zhu Ming. Bian Xinchen's expression darkened. He scoffed and said, Don't you forget that you were the one who told me that only the heartless Tao could help me become a god. Zhu Ming's body shook and his face turned pale. Many emotions flashed across his eyes. I did not think that you would really do that. I just for Mother Foam? Bian Xinchen interrupted him, his eyes full of sarcasm. You've liked her since you were young. When you gave me the Heartless Tao technique, I already knew your motive. It was to make Mother Foam give up on me. Now that both of you are ghost immortals, it can be said that I have fulfilled your wish of so many years. Shut up, Zhu Ming roared. His expression was one of regret and anger. He pointed the sword in his hand at the person in front of him. I did have selfish motives back then, but I never thought that you would really... He could not continue. His entire body trembled as he gritted his teeth and said, Kill your wife to prove your Tao. As soon as he said this, everyone present took a deep breath. Shit, another scumbag. So he was the one who killed Mother Foam in her previous life. They were husband and wife. It was no wonder that Mother Foam was so angry even after losing her primary soul. Bian Xinchen's expression did not change in the slightest. Cutting off all emotions is the key to achieving the Tao. Only by killing my wife can I become a god. I have never regretted killing her. Bian, Xin, Chun. Zhu Ming was getting angrier. Don't forget, you had a part in Mother Feng's death. Zhu Ming's body stiffened. His face turned even paler, but he continued to glare at the person in front of him. I did let Mother Foam down. That's why I became a ghost immortal. I wanted to take revenge on you. With that said, he summoned his weapon and charged at Bian Xinchen. Return Mother Feng's primary soul. Bian Xinchen did not seem to care about him at all. He did not even try to dodge. Before Zhu Ming could get close to Bian Xinchen, he was repelled by the golden lotus around him. His soul was also on the verge of collapsing. Lone Moon glanced at Zhu Ming, who was lying on the ground. He did not like the two of them at all. Although he knew that Zhu Ming was hiding something, he did not expect it to be something like this. In his previous life, Zhu Ming tempted others to cultivate the heartless Tao in order to get the woman he loved. In the end, Bian Xinchen killed his wife to prove his Tao. Each was worse than the last. Poor Mother Foam. She was killed by her husband when she was alive. After she became a ghost immortal, she lost her primary soul. Bien Xinchen's success in becoming a supreme divinity probably had something to do with Mother Feng's primary soul. Lone Moon just did not understand why Bien Xinchen would disguise himself as him. Was it a coincidence? Lone Moon looked at the person in the sky. No matter what, he had to get Bai Zai's remnant souls back first. Shuning. Shuning nodded. In a flash, she appeared behind Bien Xinchen. She reached out to grab him. Bien Xinchen was shocked. This time, he reacted quickly. He retreated more than 10 meters. His eyes darkened. Suddenly, he gathered his last bit of god power and turned to strike. Shuning had no intention of dodging. The god power brushed past her waist and flew towards the direction behind her, where Mother Feng was. Mother Feng, Zhu Ming exclaimed. He rushed over, but he was too late. The god power hit Mother Feng directly, and the array trapping her instantly dimmed. Before anyone could react, Mother Feng rushed out once again. Her body was brimming with resentment as she rushed towards Bien Xinchen. Using all her strength, she shouted, Bien, Xin, Chun. Mother Feng, don't. Zhu Ming cried out, but it was too late. Mother Feng was already engulfed by the grievous energy. Her thin, cicada-like soul body collapsed with a ding. It turned into spots of light and disappeared into the black, grievous energy. Mother Feng! Zhu Ming fell to the ground as if he had lost consciousness. His face was filled with despair. The next moment, Bien Xinchen's god power surged. His cultivation level increased exponentially. His entire body was enveloped in blue god power. Even the god power that Shan Ying had destroyed earlier started to gather again. His face was filled with excitement. Indeed, she's the only obstacle in my way of achieving the great Tao. Only when she disappears can I cultivate the heartless Tao and become the only true God in the divine realm. Ha ha ha. His expression became more and more excited, and the divine power around him became thicker and thicker. The pressure that filled the sky came crashing down on everyone, and everyone felt their blood boiling. Shorty, who had the lowest cultivation level, fell to one knee and spat out a mouthful of blood. Being heartless is also your way of thinking. Is there something wrong with your understanding, or is there something wrong with your IQ? Do you think that killing the person you like will break your love? You're the one who's moved, and you're also the one who's in love. If you want to be heartless, why don't you castrate yourself first? It's none of your wife's business. In the end, it's just an excuse that you can't bear to do it to yourself. No, killing his wife to prove his Tao? Are you a professional hater of the main street? Forget it. The great Tao has never lacked girls. It doesn't need your wife's life. I'm not wrong. The next time you cultivate, read more books, she suggested seriously. Otherwise, you'll become a scum who won't even let his wife go. Shut up. Bien Xinchen retorted loudly, but his face was getting paler and paler. There was no way he could stop his god power from flowing out of his body. His cultivation level was dropping too, to the point where it could not even compare to a small god's. My cultivation level, no, chef, come here. Shining could not be bothered with him. She gestured to the people over there, pointing at the man who was desperately trying to hold on to something on the ground. Summon a soul. I don't know how. Summon a soul? I Ching paused, but still conjured a spell and sent it over. Bien Xinchen could not resist I Ching's spell at all. Instantly, a virtual image of a woman floated out of his body, floating in front of everyone. Mother Feng, the few of them exclaimed. This was Mother Feng's primary soul. They did not expect her to be in his body. Perhaps because the rest of her soul had already dissipated, Mother Feng's primary soul had already fallen into a deep sleep. Her eyes were closed, and she looked very peaceful. She did not look like she was before, her face full of blood and tears. Lone Moon quickly conjured a spell and kept Mother Feng's primary soul. Although there was only a sliver of her primary soul left, as long as she was placed in the river of forgetfulness, the power of samsara would be able to repair her soul one day. As for Bien Xinchen, the moment Mother Feng's primary soul left his body, his cultivation level dropped even further. All the blue god power in his body disappeared. In an instant, his cultivation level was even lower than Xiantong's. Everyone frowned. Suddenly, they understood why he wanted Mother Feng's primary soul. Just as Shening had said, he killed his wife to prove his Tao. He did not cultivate the heartless Tao. Perhaps he even helped Mother Feng. The moment Mother Feng died, she no longer had any feelings for him. That was why she could cultivate to become a ghost immortal in the underworld. Perhaps Bian Xinshin's cultivation level increased greatly the moment he killed Mother Feng. But as time passed, he must have discovered something wrong. That was why he tried his best to seal Mother Feng's primary soul in his body. His cultivation level came from Mother Feng. That's strange. Where are the remnant souls of the others? Lo Moon asked anxiously. He conjured a few soul-summoning spells, but there was no sign of the other remnant souls. There was only Mother Feng's primary soul in Bian Xinshin's body. Ha 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 ha. Bian Xinshin suddenly laughed maniacally. His eyes were filled with hatred as he looked at them. Do you think I set up this mystic realm just to kill Mother Feng? What do you mean? Lo Moon's heart sank. So what if he got Mother Feng's primary soul? Soon, all of you will be like her, never to be reincarnated. He laughed even more maniacally. If I can't become a true god, all of you will die with me. What did you say? Everyone was shocked. Bian Xinshin conjured a spell. The next moment, his body and his soul began to crack like glass. He disappeared in front of everyone's eyes. This is a sacrifice, Baize exclaimed. Before anyone could react, the ground suddenly shook, and the entire mystic realm began to collapse. Faint rumbling sounds, each louder than the last, could be heard, and bursts of red light shone from above. What's wrong? It's outside. Lone Moon looked up and shouted. This mystic realm is going to collapse. Let's get out. The few of them mounted their swords and rushed out. The moment they exited the mystic realm, they found themselves in a sky full of red light. The red light from the array was everywhere. It was like pillars of light shooting up into the dark sky. It was as if the sky was being torn apart. Chapter 272. Bian Xinshin used his soul as a sacrifice just now. He must have activated some array. Baize shouted, gesturing for everyone to rush out of the red light. The group did not hesitate. They flew away from the red light on their swords. Looking back, they saw that the red light was spreading endlessly in all directions. It was like a spider's web covering the entire ground. Streaks of red light shot up into the sky, dyeing the entire divine underworld red. The shaking of the ground became more and more obvious. Shrill cries of ghosts could be heard all around them. The sound was so sharp that it almost pierced through their eardrums. The wandering souls that had been wandering around seemed to be in great pain. They began to flee in all directions. There are many auras over there. I Ching suddenly pointed to the right where the two realms meet. The group exchanged a look. Let's go. They turned and flew in the direction of the divine underworld. A journey that should have taken an hour took them less than 10 minutes to reach the place where the two realms met. It was not that they had increased their speed, but the divine underworld seemed to have shrunk. There was a white light in front of them. A translucent wall of light blocked the divine underworld, sealing it off completely. There were countless arrays on it that they could not understand. It was connected to the red light that was everywhere in the divine underworld. There seemed to be some kind of force pulling it towards the divine underworld. The wall of light was slowly moving towards the divine underworld. With every inch it moved, the darkness in the divine underworld disappeared a little. The divine world also expanded a little. It looked like the divine underworld was being swallowed up. They did not know what the wall of light was. Every time the wandering souls from the divine underworld touched it, their soul bodies would begin to crumble and they would scream in agony. What was even more shocking was that behind the wall of light, there were countless divine beings from different races. They were all making hand seals in unison, as if trying their best to push the wall of light in front of them to swallow up the divine underworld. They could vaguely see familiar figures inside. That's the drama queen? I Ching paused. He looked at the two people at the front of the group. Feng San, Longjun. Lone Moon stepped forward and shouted, "What are you doing? What array is this?" The person on the other side didn't reply, as if he didn't hear their shouts at all. He just maintained the formation with a dull expression. Their souls have been controlled by someone and have become one with the array. They can't hear us at all. Bai Zai's face darkened as he explained, "The others should be the same." Everyone's hearts trembled. They looked at the countless figures outside the matrix in disbelief. The four of them, in the blink of an eye, the figure that was still a white dot in front of them was getting closer and closer. A moment later, they felt their ears stop buzzing. They had already stopped in front of the white figure. It was a white-robed old man with a head of white hair. Even his beard was white. There seemed to be a habitual trace of a smile on his lips. He looked like an amiable old man. There was not a trace of hostility on his face. He did not look like someone who wanted to destroy the entire netherworld at all. "It's you." The old man frowned. He looked straight at Lone Moon. There was no panic in his eyes. Instead, he looked like he understood. "My prediction was right. You're the biggest variable." You know, ugh. Before Lone Moon could finish, his expression changed. The side effects of moving at such a high speed exploded. He turned and vomited. His face turned green. His vomiting seemed to have turned on some kind of switch. I Ching, Bai Zai, and Shorty all turned their heads. Their faces turned green as they started vomiting. It looked like they were going to vomit their bile out. In an instant, there were only two people standing opposite each other and four people who were bent over and vomiting. Shunning the old man, the scene was extremely awkward. Straight face, he knew it would turn out like this. Shunning had run away really fast. Lone Moon conjured several spells on himself before he managed to suppress the urge to vomit. He looked at the person opposite him. "Who exactly are you?" Before he could finish speaking, Bai Zai, who had also recovered, exclaimed, "Supreme Divinity Hong Yu." Chapter 273. The man snapped out of his trance and smiled at Bai Zai. "Supreme Divinity Bai Zai, it's been a long time. Why are you here?" Bai Zai could not believe his eyes. He had known Hong Yu for so many years. The other party had always been unconcerned about anything and had always been so kind. Although he was the person with the highest cultivation level in the divine world, he could not even bear to hurt the wild beasts. He could even share his cultivation techniques with others. "Hong Yu, you really want to destroy the underworld?" Hong Yu's smile deepened. He had no intention of hiding it at all. "This is my lifelong wish." Why? He had never thought that the person who wanted to destroy the underworld would be him. "Everything I do is for the people of the three realms." People? Without the underworld, how can the people of the three realms reincarnate? "I don't want to reincarnate." Bai Zai was shocked. "What do you mean?" Hong Yu looked calm. His eyes darkened. A moment later, he said, "Bai Zai, I'm different from you. I've been alive since ancient times. I watched my friends and family leave me one by one. No matter if they were friends or foes in life. Once they reincarnated, everything is gone. I'm the only one left. Although their souls are the same, they're no longer the people they were before. I've always been thinking about how I can find them." He sighed, as if recalling something from the past. A look of loss flashed across his eyes. In this world, be it humans, immortals, or gods, nothing lasts forever. Neither immortals nor gods can. Neither immortals nor gods can. One day, we will all die and enter reincarnation to become someone else. His eyes darkened as he looked at the crowd. Everyone in the three realms pursues eternal life. Mortals want to ascend to become immortals. Immortals want to become gods. As for the gods, they would still fall. I'm the only one left from the first batch of ancient gods. Does anyone still remember the ancient Qilin and the black tortoise? I've always wondered why we still came to an end when we had an unlimited lifespan. He suddenly smiled. He looked as kind as ever, and his body was still glowing faintly. In the end, I finally understood. The reason why there is no true immortality in this world is because there is reincarnation. Bai Zai was shocked. He immediately understood why he had come to the underworld. You want to destroy the reincarnation stage. Without reincarnation, there is no reincarnation. Hong Yu did not seem the least bit afraid that Lone Moon would find out. He continued, as long as the underworld is gone, there will be no reincarnation stage. The living beings of the three realms would not be pulled into the cycle of reincarnation, and there would be no such thing as birth and death. This is true eternal life for everyone in the three realms. You, Bai Zai's eyes widened. Do you know how many wandering souls your formation will kill? Shining, Lone Moon, Hong Yu, Air, Father Nyo, if I said I didn't do it on purpose, would you believe me? Believe your sister. Lone Moon felt the urge to kill someone. Are you a freaking spy sent by a monkey? It's one thing for you to smash the ground, but why did you smash the reincarnation stage as well? She was in cahoots with Hong Yu, wasn't she? Fortunately, there were only some cracks on the reincarnation stage. It had not collapsed yet. Crack, a crisp sound rang out. The ground suddenly shook. Before Shan-Ing could retract her fist, there was a sudden crash. A crack about a meter wide appeared on the ground, and it started to tear towards the reincarnation stage. Holy shit! Holy shit! Holy shit! What he wanted really came true. Lone Moon's face turned pale. Oh no! Oh no! Father Nyo, give me your sword. Lone Moon was still confused. Shan-Ing took the sword from his hand and turned to the right. She gripped the sword tightly in her hand and stabbed it into the ground. There was a loud crash. An even bigger crack appeared on the right side, stopping the crack that was spreading towards the reincarnation stage. The crack stopped immediately. Lone Moon heaved a sigh of relief. Damn it, he was scared to death. Elder, Sect Master. Suddenly, a voice filled with fear rang out. The two of them turned to look and their eyes widened. Shorty. They did not know when Shorty had been caught by Hong Yu and placed on the reincarnation stage. What are you trying to do? The soul pearl is gone. This girl's soul is special. She can still destroy the reincarnation stage. Hong Yu suddenly smiled at the two of them, as if he had accomplished something big. He grabbed Xiantong and jumped into the reincarnation stage. Shorty. Lone Moon was shocked. It was too late to rush over. The two of them were no longer on the reincarnation stage. All he could see was a patch of golden light. Lone Moon was anxious. Hong Yu was doing this on purpose. He had no intention of using the soul pearl to destroy the reincarnation stage. He wanted to use Shorty's soul. What should we do? Shan-Ing, can you see Shorty? No. Shan-Ing shook her head. Suddenly, she recalled something. Father Nyo, the pearl containing Shorty's remnant soul is with you, right? Yes, but throw it in. What? Quick. Lone Moon retrieved the soul bead and threw it into the reincarnation stage. In the next moment, there was a loud crash. The reincarnation stage began to collapse inch by inch. The golden light inside seemed to be blown away, scattering in all directions. Like fluorescent light, it slowly dimmed. Lone Moon looked at the surrounding fluorescent light in a daze. His eyes darkened. Shorty, she's already gone back. Shan-Ing suddenly interrupted. What? Lone Moon paused. He realized that Shan-Ing was looking in the direction where the fluorescent light was dispersing. He followed her gaze and found that the fluorescent light that had dimmed earlier was suddenly lighting up again. It was getting brighter and brighter. It was also spreading in all directions. The underworld, which had already shrunk by half due to Hong Yu's array, was now expanding outwards. Golden fluorescent light was everywhere. It was like the floodgates had been opened. It flowed endlessly. Lone Moon finally understood why Shan-Ing said that the underworld was too bright. It was indeed very bright. Looking up, the entire underworld was covered in golden light. It looked like a boundless ocean, but he could faintly see a few black rivers. This was the source of the river of forgetfulness? Not the reincarnation stage, but the entire underworld? Lone Moon was still in a daze. Suddenly, the scenery in front of him changed. It went from a golden ocean to a blue sky. This was the divine territory of the ancient gods. Sect Master, Elder Lone Moon. A familiar voice sounded from behind. Lone Moon turned back to see a familiar figure walking over from afar. Her lips were curved in a bright smile. Shorty. Lone Moon was overjoyed. That was great. She was fine. Just as he was about to step forward, Shun-Ing suddenly spoke. Ming-Pe. What? Chapter 275. Lone Moon paused. He glanced at Shun-Ing and then at Xian-Tong, who was smiling even wider. What the hell? I'm still used to you calling me Shorty. Xian-Tong smiled a little proudly and walked quickly to Shun-Ing. Sect Master is indeed as wise as ever. When did you realize that? I even sealed my memories and split off a remnant of my soul. Shun-Ing thought about it seriously. From when the God Fiend asked us to find you. Meng Po's mouth twitched. She looked listless. Didn't you find out from the beginning? Sect Master, can't you give me some face? Can't you coax me some other time? Oh, Shun-Ing nodded and continued. Then let's start from the first time I saw you and felt that your soul was abnormal. Wasn't that even earlier? Straight face. Wait. Lone Moon interrupted them, looking confused. Shun-Ing. Short. She's Ming-Pe. You knew from the beginning, but you never told me? I thought you knew. Shun-Ing tilted her head. What the hell? How would I know if you didn't tell me? What's going on? Isn't she Chun-Ji's mental demon? Mental demons are not souls. Even with the power of reincarnation, how can a complete soul be formed in just a few lifetimes? Before Shun-Ing could speak, Xian-Tong explained, back then I was too bored in the divine underworld and wanted to go to the human world. I found the mental demon in the river of forgetfulness, and out of curiosity, I captured it and reincarnated. Actually, I reincarnated many times before that. You went by yourself? Then why did the God Fiend ask us to find you? If she was Ming-Pe, how could the God Fiend not tell? Was he blind? He doesn't know that I reincarnated. She shook her head. They were all three ancient gods. They could predict everything in the world, but not each other. What's more, I left a remnant of my soul by the river of forgetfulness. That's why he thought I was still in the divine underworld. Later, my remnant soul was captured by Hong Yu, and he discovered that I was missing. Hong Yu had also noticed that this remnant soul was different from other souls. That was why he had pulled her back to the divine underworld from the immortal world. Then what's with the plot that the God Fiend gave me? It was clearly about her. Although I was immortal after reincarnating, my luck was naturally different from others. Coincidentally, he wanted to solve the problem of the devil realm, so he included me in his calculations. The main female lead's luck in the plot was also because she was Ming-Pe. How torturous! No wonder Hong Yu had instructed Bian Xinshan to drag her to the divine realm by force. He even said that her soul was special. Wasn't it special? She was the original body of the river of forgetfulness. Lone Moon scanned the familiar yet strange person in front of him. He opened his mouth as if he wanted to say something, but the words did not come out. He clenched his fist by his side and said, Then now, are you Shorty or Ming-Pe? Both. Lone Moon frowned, not satisfied with this answer. Little Shorty, can't you come back? Ming-Pe did not reply, as if she did not know how to answer this question. Forget it. Lone Moon sighed. He did not want to know the answer again. Damn it. Was his invincible sect destined not to have any sword cultivator disciples? Since you're Ming-Pe, do you have a way to let those people who are missing remnant souls return? Without someone controlling them, their remnant souls will return on their own. She smiled and said, Mother Feng has already entered samsara. It's just that the scattered wandering souls in the divine realm will need some time to gather and form a soul. Lone Moon heaved a sigh of relief. It was good that everything was fine. But there's one person who is a little troublesome. Ming-Pe suddenly frowned, as if she had encountered a problem. His soul is about to dissipate, but he is unwilling to enter samsara. Lone Moon paused. Instantly, he knew who it was. Hong Yu. She nodded and waved her hand. In a moment, a white-haired, white-bearded old man appeared in front of the two of them. He still looked kind and amiable, but there was a hint of worry in his eyes. His body, which was brimming with god power, was now extremely transparent. It was as if he was about to shatter at any moment. You? Seeing Lone Moon, Hong Yu paused. A moment later, he seemed to have thought of something. His entire body bent, and he fell to the ground, as if he had lost his last bit of strength. His face was full of despair. I never thought that after so many years of planning, it would all be for naught. Lone Moon frowned. He did not know what to say. Hongyu was not exactly a bad person. He did not even have any selfish motives. He just wanted to keep everything in this world. He did not even hesitate to jump into the reincarnation stage and self-destruct. Bai Zhe said that when he opened a forum to preach, he did not reject anyone. More than 80% of the living beings in the divine realm had benefited from his kindness. Although his motive for doing this was probably to obtain a remnant soul from everyone to help him enter the divine realm, it was undeniable that he was sincere. What's more, he had spells to control souls. He could have been like Bian Xinshan and directly extracted the primary soul to increase his own god power, but he did not. Even in the end, he did not risk everything and let those who were being controlled rush in a fight to the death. He was indeed a kind person. It was just that he had gone in the wrong direction. Forget it. Hongyu sighed. His body became more and more transparent. His soul started to glow faintly. This is fate. The living beings in the three realms are destined to be unable to escape the pain of reincarnation. They can only struggle to survive in the mortal world. No matter how hard I try, I will not be able to fight against the heavens. Why do you say reincarnation is painful? Shining suddenly asked. Hongyu paused and looked at her. If reincarnation is not painful, why do people want to become immortals and seek the Tao? My lifelong wish is to help the living beings in the three realms escape this kind of reincarnation. But what does your lifelong wish have to do with the living beings in the three realms? What? Hongyu paused. I say, Uncle, have you not done a census? There are many people who seek immortality, but most of them are mortals. But who doesn't want to live forever? Oh, that means you've asked the living beings in the three realms? He was speechless. You didn't even ask them, and you're so sure that they all want to live forever? Shining sighed and sat down cross-legged. She supported her head with one hand and said, Perhaps living forever is good, but only you think it's good. Everyone thinks differently. Who knows? There might be people who don't want to live anymore. Hongyu's face paled. He could not find the words to refute her. You didn't even ask them, and you're making decisions for others. Everyone has the right to vote in the election of the president, right? Whether they live or die is fine. This is someone else's business. You can't take away their right to choose and then say that it's for their own good, can you? Uncle is a god. You can't have such double standards. With a wave of his hand, a scroll appeared in front of the two of them. This is the method to set up the formation to open the gate between the two worlds. As long as you pass through this array, you will be able to return to your world. Lone Moon took the scroll. He did not expect the God Fiend to give him the method so easily. He had left his original world for too long. If not for Xin Ying's sudden appearance, he would have forgotten everything there. We just need to set up an array. Shining looked at the scroll curiously. Don't we need a pass? Pass. The God Fiend hesitated. He did not seem to understand what she meant. After a while, he added, Connecting the two worlds requires a lot of God power. So we need to open the realm gate in the divine realm. He waved his hand. Immediately, two exits appeared in front of the two of them. This is the exit between the divine realm and the immortal realm. Stay in the divine realm or return to the immortal realm. Please think twice. Shit. He knew it would not be so simple. They could only choose one of the two. You mean to say that we can't go to the other after choosing one? Xin Ying's eyes narrowed. The God Fiend stiffened. Then, he smiled even more brightly. Of course not. It's just that it takes a long time to open the interrealm array, and it consumes a lot of cultivation. You have to be at least a divine supreme to open that array. Oh, Shunning glanced at the God Fiend. Something flashed across her eyes. She did not continue speaking. Then let's return to the divine realm first. Lone Moon made a decision quickly. Chef was still there anyway. It would not be too late to study the array later. Since that's the case, the two of you can return to the divine realm through the exit on the right. The God Fiend pointed to the right. Lone Moon and Shun Ying exchanged a look. Then, they turned and walked to the right. Just as they were about to step through the door, Meng suddenly spoke. Secmaster, Huh? The two of them turned around subconsciously. Meng stared blankly at Lone Moon. An unreadable emotion flashed across her face, and her hands seemed to tremble by her side. A moment later, she smiled brightly and said, Sect Master, Elder Lone Moon, can I still return to Invincible Sect to see you? Lone Moon frowned, but he still nodded. Yes, even if she was no longer short. Thank you. Her smile deepened, but there was something in her eyes. Her smile did not reach her eyes. She waved at the two of them. Goodbye, Sect Master. Goodbye, Elder. Their only sword cultivator disciple was gone, just like that. Lone Moon sighed. Then, he turned and was about to step through the exit. Wait. Shining suddenly pulled him back. She turned back to glance at the reluctant Meng, then looked at the God Fiend beside her. A moment later, she said, God Fiend, this exit wouldn't be the plain door, would it? Just as she finished speaking, a white light flashed behind her. The door that had only 1 foot through suddenly moved toward the two of them. In an instant, it swallowed them up. They could even vaguely see a certain someone's panicked expression. In the next moment, the scenery in front of the two of them changed. A passionate voice, accompanied by a few beeping sounds, came from the front. Do the two of you need a taxi? It's the cheapest in the entire film city. Which hotel are you going back to? A middle-aged man walked past the passenger seat and stuck his head out towards the two of them. You're still wearing ancient clothes. Did you just finish work? Shunning, Lone Moon, this is modern times. MMP, a month later. I've seen it. The scroll that the God Fiend gave me did not contain any array at all. It's empty inside. Oh, he did it on purpose. From the beginning, he planned to send the two of us back directly after finding Meng Pa. This scum who destroys the bridge after crossing it. He even pretended to swear some heavenly Tao oath. I've only just thought it through. He's an existence equivalent to the heavenly Tao. Oaths are useless to him. Oh. Shining tapped on the computer while opening a bottle of Coke. And I've clearly spent hundreds of years in that world. Only 4 or 5 days have passed here. This time difference is too big. Oh. Shining looked up at him and sighed. So, you came to find me for this? Of course not. His expression darkened. I went back to the company recently and discovered some things. With a heavy expression, he picked up the iPad beside Shining and opened a video. He pushed it in front of her. Look. This is my house, you dash before she could finish. Lone Moon tapped lightly on the iPad. In the next moment, Shunying's phone rang with a notification. DD. Received WeChat transfer of ***** yuan. All right, Father Nyo. No problem, Father Nyo. Her eyes lit up. Which room do you want to stay in? Would you like a cup of coffee with milk or sugar? King retard. Lone Moon rolled his eyes at the pauper. Suddenly, his gaze landed on the computer in front of Shuning. Oh yes, I saw you typing nonstop just now. What exactly were you doing? Wait, isn't this our company's back-end database? What do you want? Nothing much. Shuning chuckled. I just deleted some useless information that was stored in your server last time. Information? Lone Moon's expression darkened. Why did I see that you opened the online game database? Shining coughed. I also changed my online game data. Damn you. Don't change the game data just because others won't find it. Shining had already reopened the game interface and logged in. In less than 10 seconds, with a thud, she landed on the ground and turned into a box. Lone Moon, who was about to stop her, straight face. This game skill was completely inversely proportional to hacking skills. It was really refreshing. How on earth did you do it, turning into a box the moment you landed on the ground? Indeed, 10 times the defense is still not enough? Why don't you change it to 100 times? Enough. You might as well change it to invincible. Degree. Lone Moon took a deep breath and looked at the person in front of him who had completely turned into an internet addict. His expression darkened, and he sighed. Shining, don't you want to go back to that world? Shining paused and finally looked up from the computer screen. Father Nyo, do you want to go back? He faltered for a moment and clenched his fist by his side. After a while, he sighed and said, Yes. Although only 4 or 5 days had passed here, he had lived in that world for hundreds of years. He had long gotten used to life there. Even though he originally belonged to this world, to him now, it was this world that was foreign. Everything he was familiar with was already in another world. I want to go back. Oh, Shining frowned. After a while, she said, but even if I have a way to send you back, if you are alone, the God Fiend will still send you back. The corner of Lone Moon's mouth twitched. He seemed to have just thought of this problem. That's why you have to go back with me. I can't stay there for too long. Shun Ying shrugged. Why? Because... Shun Ying was just about to explain when she suddenly remembered something. Her eyes widened. Oh yes, what's the date today? What time is it? Huh? Lone Moon faltered. He looked at the electronic calendar at the side and said, Isn't it the 10th? It's almost 12. Shun Ying's face paled. She stood up abruptly. Oh no, go out for a while. Hurry. What? It's too late. Shun Ying was just about to push him away when she looked at the time and pulled him back. Hurry and hide. Wait. Before Lone Moon could react, she pressed him under the table in the next moment. What the hell? In the next moment, there was a beep on Shun Ying's computer. The screen flashed, and a figure that looked very similar to Shun Ying appeared on the screen. Little Ying. A low female voice sounded. Shun Ying's whole body stiffened. She turned around as if her whole body was stuck. She forced a smile and called out in a low voice. Big sister. Why do you still look so pale after resting for a few days? The person on the screen frowned. Did you slack off again and go somewhere to have fun? No. Shun Ying immediately sat up straight. She shook her head like a rattle drum and straightened her back. I didn't go anywhere. I've finished all the follow-up work. Really? She sweated profusely.